Good morning, everyone. We're going to call a meeting of the Board of Supervisors to order. Today is Thursday, January 17th, 2019. It is just 8:30 a.m. We're in the Community Center at the Sierra Room at 851 East William Street, also on the public access cable channel and streaming on the internet. Aubrey, congratulations to you and welcome to the hot seat over there. Can you give us a roll call, please?
Sure thing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Supervisor Giomi?
Here.
Supervisor Bonkowski?
Here.
Supervisor Bagwell?
Here.
Supervisor Barrett?
Here.
Mayor Kroll?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Aubrey. Can we call on our good friend Brian Underwood from the Sierra Lutheran High to give us a start on the right foot today, Brian? Thank you. And we need it today, too.
Pardon me?
Give us a good one today.
We'll do our best. I just want to thank you so much for allowing me to share today's invocation. And with that, let's join our hearts, shall we? Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for your goodness, your grace, and your mercy, and for all the blessings you give us each and every day, including the opportunity to live, work, and enjoy this special corner of the world you've created here in Carson City. As your work unfolds here today, I pray that you grant this board and all who contribute wisdom and discernment to seek you in their comments and decisions, and that where possible, the greater good of your people would reign. Lord, many of the things to be discussed today include the honoring of some of your great servants. In these moments, we grant that you have asked those people to be here and that you would give them a sense of fulfillment and peace for what they have done and for what lies ahead. Father, you remind us to count the cost before a tower is built. So we therefore ask for your presence and power as these leaders consider matters of finance for the future. Please grant them wisdom to make godly decisions for your people. And Lord, while we don't know what the future holds, we know that you hold it. And with that in mind, we also ask that you please fill this place with a spirit of open and respectful dialogue on these topics related to the future development of our blessed city. May the decisions made be ones that you would in some way use to allow your people here and those who visit to see you. And finally, Lord God, we know decisions and actions will be taken here today on future leadership of your people. Please be with that process and with those who accept the mantle to lead, and that they would willingly do so and always be a reproach in carrying out these duties. We ask all these things in your precious and holy name. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, let's turn to item number 5. This is public comment at the beginning of meetings. Public is invited to comment on and discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of this body. Anybody on public comment this morning? And we have public comment. Yeah, we'll get there. We have come on up. We have public comment as we go through the day, and we'll be concluding public comment. We have redevelopment, so there'll be a couple more redevelopment things. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor, Board of Supervisors. My name is Elaine Barkdahl Spencer, and I'm the General Manager of the V&T Railway here in Carson City. I'm making my rounds reporting to our various partners to let them know about what's going on out at the depot. Our depot is located at Eastgate Recreational Area, and this is my first year as your General Manager. But we had a great summer. In fact, we exceeded last year's numbers this summer. We had a wonderful Polar Express season. We got very fortunate as far as weather. And but the coming year is what I'm really excited about, because the commission owns the McLeod, the number 18 steam engine. Well, she's coming back to the tracks.
When is that?
In June.
Is 18 coming back?
This summer, in June. We just met with Tom Gray yesterday, and he's been working on it steadily. And with the 18, we can bring back another passenger car, which means 70 additional riders daily. And that, of course, is going to mean more revenue, and we'll be doing a little more than just breaking even each ride. When we fill 2 passenger cars, we'll now have 3. I'm also excited because we have determined that it's the canyon that needs to be utilized more, and it's definitely one of the best assets to us and to Carson City. So we are going to do wine trains every other Saturday now, beginning June 15th through fall. And we're also looking at doing rail bikes. And I'm not sure, who knows, which of you have seen rail bikes, but they're pretty exciting. They have them down in Boulder City, and they have them there at their Railroad Museum. Well, we're considering bringing them here. So basically, they're hand cars, but you sit down and use your legs. And so that's something hopefully we'll be coming back to you and discussing that in the future. But that would be a 7 days a week operation. So we would be out there 7 days a week instead of just the weekends. We do have a partnership with Carson City, and I'd really just like to say thank you. Because if it weren't for your Parks and Rec Department, Rick Cooley and his group, and also your signage, the gentleman in charge of your signage, I believe their names are David, last name escapes me right now, but what a big help this year. Signage has been our biggest challenge, to have people find the depot, the Eastgate Depot. They worked with us and we added signage this year. We improved the roads. They brought over barriers for our parking lot. They washed down the parking lot before we had it striped before Polar Express. These are things, as far as we being a very small group of people, can't really accomplish or have done. And it is financially challenging for us. But because of Carson City, we were able to have a more improved and better appearance this year for our passengers. And I just wanted to say thank you for that, and thank you for working with us on the signage. And this partnership is something that we're very proud of, and we're very proud to be Carson City's train.
Well, Elaine, we hear nothing but good things about you, so well done. And how did Polar Express go?
Polar Express went well. We did not exceed last year. And we had to look back and try to determine why we just weren't selling those tickets in advance as quickly as we had done the year prior. Well, Thanksgiving had come early, but there's always this rumor out there, Polar Express is sold out, don't even bother buying tickets. Well, that's not always the case. So we were out there trying to dispel that rumor. The earlier trains, Thanksgiving coming earlier, we did try to hurry and catch up, so we did some 2-for-1s in the beginning. And then also in Washoe County, and I believe in Carson County as well, that the kids got out of school later. And it wasn't until Christmas, the week of Christmas, were the kids out for their holiday. And we noticed that. People weren't booking tickets until, Christmas week. So December sold out, completely sold out that last 3 weeks. But again, we had a tough start. We were about $60,000 down, but we made up for that during our great summer season. So we did exceed the year prior, but it was because of our summer season.
Excellent. Any questions of Elaine? Anybody? Thank you, and thanks to your V&T board.
I will. And Nick Morano said hi.
Hi back. And how are we getting along? We okay between jurisdictions and everything? Everybody's happy?
Everybody's happy.
All right.
And everybody's playing a great part in what they can bring to the table. And I wouldn't change a thing. It's going very well.
Right. Thanks, Elaine.
Thank you.
All right. Any other public comment? Anybody? Want to weigh in? Yeah, John.
We don't talk in public comment, but I would like to welcome Stacy. He has big shoes to fill as the supervisor from Ward 1, but fortunately he's a big man and has big shoes, so I'm expecting great things from him.
Well, we were all considering not giving him a computer because we don't know if he can work it or not.
Crayons. Give me crayons.
Yeah, he wants crayons, but no, we do all welcome you, Stacy, to the board, and we look forward to working with you, man, so, okay. All right, any other public comment? Anybody? All right, let's then move on to item 6, potential approval of the minutes of December 6th, 2018. Everybody had a chance to read those? Any changes? Motions in order.
I move to approve the minutes of the Carson City Board of Supervisors for December 6th, 2018, as presented.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Man, where'd mine go? Aye, okay. All right, let's take up the agenda. Any changes to the agenda that you know of, City Manager? Board members, we want to change
No
anything on the
changes.
agenda? Not that we can change, but we can take things off, okay. Then without objection, we will adopt the agenda as published. Let's now move to the floor and do the length of service awards and the employee of the quarter. Okay, let's go down there.
It was like last night.
All right, so who are we going to do first?
Longevity?
Okay, where's Steve Castillo? Did I pronounce that correct? Castillo Salazar. You got the good vest on this morning. How you doing? Good. Steve, we want to give you this longevity award for 5 years of service to our great community here. And, we see you guys all around out there. And for the public, when you go by and you see some of them on the highway and roads and stuff like that, remember, they're your friends and neighbors. They're not just our employees. They deserve to be safe too, and treat them with courtesy, because they're out there a lot of times where times like, at least I wouldn't want to be out in the weather doing what they're doing. So, Steve, on behalf of all of us here in this community, thank you for what you do for us, and thanks for 5 years of service. Come on up here. You take that. Okay. I don't know about this guy. For 10 years, Darren Schultz. How you doing this morning?
Good morning. Great.
Everything started off with a bang this morning, right?
Good.
Huh?
Yep.
Well, Darren, I think, 10 years. I think you and I started about the same time.
We did.
Huh?
We did.
And Darren, you're the director of Public Works, but I will tell you, I'm always amazed at how many different things your department is involved in, and how often your people are called upon to do emergency work and other work around our community. And sometimes, it makes it seem like it's real easy to do, but I know it's not. And we want to thank you for your 10 years of service, and we hope we get 10 or 20 more out of you. And so, on behalf of all of us, thanks for being a great director, and thanks for all your department does. You're a good leader. Thank you. Okay, we can forget this one. Come on up, Nancy. You don't look old enough to get 20 years.
Well, thanks.
Nancy, I can't say enough good things about you. You're our city manager, you've been our CFO, and you've been with the city for 20 long years, and we look forward to many more years, and we've all said a lot about you and what you do. And as I said to Darren, sometimes we don't realize all the different things that you have to deal with during a day. Because when things seem to go smooth, everybody's, what's going on. But we all see what you do. And so on behalf of all of us, thanks for what you have done in the city to make us a better place to live, work, and play, and thanks for what you're doing right now. So on behalf of all of us, Nancy, here's your 20 years, 20 more years, do well, keep us out of trouble.
All right.
All right?
Thank
All right,
you.
here you go. Come on up here. All right. All right, I'm going to do Eric now.
Mm-hmm. There's the...
I can do it here. We're going to do Employee of the Quarter, Eric Albertson. Morning, Eric. How are you? Not too bad. Eric's in the Public Works Department, and he is our Employee of the Quarter. And let me just say, one of the reasons why he's Employee of the Quarter is, one is his people put him in for it. But if you read what he's done, this is what Carson City employees do for us in this community. I mean, he found a different way to address repairs at the Carson City pool on the non-skid and saved us about $22,000. He also found a way to retain our part-time workers into as essentially full-time capacity for the rest of the year in Public Works. They're part-time now, but we can get more full-time work through the remainder of the year. That was your idea. We thank you for thinking out of the box, thinking of ways to make things better, work better. And let me read this proclamation now that I've said that. It's a proclamation. It says, "A proclamation of the Board of Supervisors recognizing Eric Albertson, Senior Building Maintenance Worker, as the Employee of the Quarter. Whereas Carson City's quality of life attracts talented and loyal employees, and whereas every day Carson City employees put to use their broad array of skills and expertise with efficiency and integrity for the benefit of everyone in our city. And whereas Carson City values its employees and acknowledges that recognizing employees for their hard work and dedication is critical to the future health and growth of our city. And whereas we owe a substantial debt of gratitude to the Carson City employees and applaud those who go above and beyond their loyalty and ability. And whereas Eric Albertson, Senior Building Maintenance Worker, recognized the need to increase morale and fill vacant staff hours and created a solution that allows part-time employees to pick up more work hours without causing an increase to the budget, and also found a way to save the city $22,000 for the removal of non-slip surface coating on the aquatic facilities locker room decking, thereby contributing to the fulfillment of the Carson City's mission, values, and vision. And whereas it is an honor to be selected for this award by your coworkers, and it speaks highly of your work performance and how it is perceived by others. Now therefore, I, Robert Kroll, Mayor of Carson City, on behalf of all of us in your community and in particular your Board of Supervisors, celebrate the special trust and confidence in the loyalty, integrity, and ability of you, and do hereby proclaim Eric Albertson to be Employee of the Quarter for Carson City and encourage everyone to join in this special recognition. Eric, on behalf of all of us, again, let us say thank you to you. And in addition to saying thank you, the city manager has some money for you. All right. So what we're going to do, yeah, we're going to, here, you want to say a few words? Come on. Come on, I'll hold it.
Well, I really don't know what to say. I just do my job. I show up
That's all right.
and do what I'm supposed to do and get creative sometimes.
You did a good job, Eric.
Thank you,
All right.
sir.
All right, so we're going to do a couple. So I want you to come up here and stand up here with everybody. We'll do a separate picture with him.
That's fine. I'd like to have Stephanie come up since she made the nomination.
Oh, okay. So I'm sorry, Stephanie. Here, I was just going to cut you out, Stephanie. Here you go.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to stand here today and honor Eric and what he's done for our city. You know, he's the type of guy that doesn't just come in to do the job. He does the job very well, and he takes a lot of pride in what he does each and every day. And the city manager had talked about in her annual report about how we want that, you know, the ethics and morale of the city to come from the top down. And I think that Eric really exemplifies that. So I want to say thank you, Eric, for all you do for the city, and I'm grateful that we have this opportunity to honor our employees.
That was well said, Stephanie. You're doing well. All right, so we want to get a couple pictures. So let's do, you come back here with us, Eric. We'll get one big picture, then we'll do one just particularly with you so that you can have that one. That work? Yep. All right. Eric, you're okay. We'll get Eric the chapter here in a minute. All right, there's the money. Yeah, Stephanie, come on up. And if you have anybody else with you, give them up. Come on up. That look was not too good.
Probably shouldn't have said anything.
That look, that's all right.
It was our fault, not his.
You can blame us. Now that you did that, it's your check. It's your check, so.
That was good.
Got it? Awesome, thanks, Eric, very much. Thank you, keep doing the good work, and thank you for coming up and sharing your husband with us. Thank you. That's the real money.
What's yours is mine, and what's mine is mine.
Actually, I think you could probably catch that too.
That's what my husband always says.
He's like, right up in your stomach, you go in and I think if they had to catch that, they just stamp on it.
Did you try it?
I did try it.
Go pass on that.
Here's
All
your
right.
proclamation.
Thank you. It's a little different way to do it, but that's all right. We'll take Strawberry way next time. told Eric up here he could go cash that big check. Dan, this is a legal question. You know, when I was in law school, half a century ago, I was told that you could write a negotiable instrument on your stomach and go to the bank and have it canceled. Is that still a law?
I want to say as of 14 years ago, I think that was still okay, but it's been a long time since I took the bar exam as well.
It's got a routing number?
All right. All right, let's move on to the consent agenda. Anybody in the public want something pulled from the consent agenda for individual discussion? Any board members? I don't hear any motions in order for the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda consisting of one item from the city manager and one item from finance.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. That was your first vote, right?
Second.
Oh, okay. All right. Let's now take up item 12. Ken's here. Who else you got with you, Ken? Just you?
And Professor Harris.
Okay. Come on up.
I have a PowerPoint to upload.
Yeah, you want to?
Oh, you did? Perfect.
This is a presentation by Professor Tom Harris from the university and Airport Manager Ken Moen. Ken, regarding Carson City Airport Economic Impact Study.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Board of Supervisors, staff.
Is everybody flying in this weather today?
I hope I'm not on one of those flights.
Very good.
Inbound
All right.
today. I felt like I was going to fly on the way down to here today from Reno as coming over Washoe Valley. There was pretty good crosswind coming through the valley. I want to wish everybody a Happy New Year and thank you for having us here today. When I first began at the Carson City Airport Authority in March, I spent a good deal of time trying to get my feet on the ground and understand what was happening at the airport. And part of my review process is I came across an economic impact study that was completed in 2005 on part of NDOT that was included Carson City and the rest of the smaller general aviation airports in the state. That document being quite out of date, thought it was critical that we investigate what the current impact of the airport is, especially coming out of the recession. And so I contacted Professor Harris at the University of Nevada and asked him if he would, if we could commission an updated study. And over the summer, he did that for us, and today I would like to present those results. We were going to do this last night at our Airport Authority Board meeting, but we're unable to. We truncated that meeting, and I saved the professor from a drive down here last night. So we're going to follow up in February and present that. So this will be the first airing of that publicly, and I'll turn this over to Professor Harris.
As it should be.
There you go. Thank you, Ken, very much. My name's Tom Harris. I'm a professor of economics and also a state extension specialist in cooperative extension. I'm director of University Center for Economics. You don't call me Dr. Harris when I'm Tom Harris. Just call me Tom. Ken gave me a call because, right, the changing things of the economy and how the airports are playing in economic development. We were wanting to look at that to show the economic impacts of this service. And we did a study earlier a few years ago for the state looking at all various airports and how they play in a local economy. The Carson City Airport is, like I said, only northeast of Carson City, very close to Virginia City, very close to Lake Tahoe, an area where people come to recreate, but also I'd say it's also close to the Reno Tahoe Industrial Center. Whatever will come out of that, yes, people go to Reno Airport, but they also will have opportunities to use this because it's going to be playing a major part. Right now, the state legislature is going on. I'm sure this airport will have a very big part in that. One of the things we did find, a big study was done on Nevada airports, that pilots consider the Carson City Airport, I'm using CCA, to be most user-friendly in northern Nevada. That's very good, because that brings more customers to your locality. It's the fifth busiest. Of course, there's Las Vegas and there's Reno, but there's North Las Vegas and the one in Douglas. It's the fifth busiest, but for general aviation, the third. So it's gaining. It still has that activity, and it plays a crucial role in economic vitality in Carson City. It does create jobs and income for Carson, and through its normal, what we're going to talk about, its normal airport operations. But with that, you get other industries that are lined around it, that because you have the airport, other industries are there also. And there's general aviation opportunities as well as tourism. So it's just not by itself. It plays a very interconnected. And as we go in the future, I think airports are going to be even more so when people look at location. Why do I move to one area? There's a lot of things. You hear education, labor supply, all this, but availability of an airport is very important. And who knows? I mean, like I said, I've talked to many people with the drones and everything. Who's going to be managing those things? It seems like an airport situation, a locality may play a very important part in that. And it also, like I said, it plays a big part in quality of life for the community, that they know that the airport's there. There was a study done in the state of Washington that looked at the entire aviation, but mainly what they found, that's why I think it's just not by themselves, but it's a network of airports, extends commerce and economic development opportunities in the state. All of them play together. And while and also, many areas also play a bit in fire suppression with our public lands. And while some individual airports are relatively small and statewide, nonetheless, all of them are very big and have an impact to communities. Airports are important economic contribution, and what we'll be doing is looking at economic output, employment, and labor. But the mere existence of an airport is very good for the local populace to know, so they know that this is an airport that they can use, and people train and become using the air services more. What did we do? Basically, what we looked at is operations of the airport. We also looked at construction activities. When you do construction, you have big economic expenditures. We also looked at airport tenants and those industries around the airport. And we also looked at estimation of tourism activity, because people fly in here, go up to Lake Tahoe or other areas for recreation. How do we do this? We use something called an input-output model, and this is a lot of people use this. And these models look at how economic sectors are linked. People, I know the governor's office of economic development has talked about clusters. Well, what they mean by clusters is that you have an economy, but there's also input suppliers and how it's linked, what we call backward and forward linkages. And so by driving these linkages, we drive how much, not only when it directly impacts the economy, but when they make an expenditure, they're buying, let's say, paper from the local paper supplier. The local paper supplier is also having their increase in economic activity. They will buy maybe more accounting services, and also the airport hires people. Those people also make expenditures in the local economy, and they say a restaurant. That restaurant relies also increased economic activity. And so it kind of turns in the local economy. That's what we're trying to do, to show that and how it's linked in some opportunities that would be in the local economy. Results, basically, we found that Carson City we looked at local, because it's local impacts we're looking at, how are you spending local. And working with Ken, we were able to get some estimations. Now, directly is about $660,000 locally spent locally by operations, and by its economic linkages, you get about almost $1 million in total economic activity just with the operations by itself. I looked at trying to estimate people, how their employees are working and living here. I got about 1.24 individuals. It increases jobs, about 3.2 jobs, and it generates about $62,000 in local income that's spent in the local economy. Is about almost $190,000. So just in its operations, yes, it's small, but it has a very big linkage to that. But that's not all by itself. Because of that economy, there's other businesses within the CCA complex. They're air training, other things. Other businesses are there because of it, and they make use of it because they're, right now, people, people buy things from the internet, people fly things in, people don't really go sometimes to retail as much, but airports are very big in transportation. And so basically what we did is looking at and trying to, with the related sectors, what their economic activity is and talking to them, it's about $13 million of local activity by these related sectors that are out there, or a total of about $18 million in total. About 81 people were employed by these related industries, which is a total of about 113 employees, and about $2 million in direct labor income. Income is employee compensation and proprietor income. That's what the income is. And it's about $3.5 million. So it generates, not only by itself, but with its linkages with people using it, these businesses being around there are also generating economic activity. Not just being around there, but having access that they can use the airport for business. Now, we also looked at tourism. This is what we did this. There was a previous study in 2005. There was a much longer study by the state, and it looked at questionnaire of Carson City, people who had visitors. And we were able to get from that activity level of number of people who were in the tourism business that said they came in here because of the airport or flew in. We inflated that a little bit, but from $2,005 to $2,018, and I looked at some employment of recreation activities to kind of increase that. So this is kind of an estimate, but tourism is a big impact with this. And so with that, we got something of about $12 million in total economic activity generated by the people flying in, doing other things in the economy for tourism, or about $16 million in total with the linkages. About 105 jobs, because tourism has a lot of jobs in it with people working in the casinos and other places. It's about 105.7 jobs, a total economic impact about 151 jobs. A direct income about $4 million, or a total of about, I was going to round off, $6 million in total economic activity because of tourism. You got the airport, people fly in, they come, they stay in the local hotels, they may shop, and they will shop. They will go up to Lake Tahoe, come back. Those expenditures add to it. If it wasn't for the airport here, they may be located somewhere else and then come out here. And that would not be something that would be attributable to the airport. The airport is also, airports have done also studies of hospitals. They're constructing, they have to build because things change, the economy changes, the population increases, the whole area here we've been seeing from the governor's speech last night, the economy has increased. Population has increased, so activity increases. Likewise, places like hospitals and airports also have to expand their base, their capital. And so Carson City Airport has been making increases to their landing facilities and building things. And this will continue because as the economy increases, and new type of aircraft, who knows what's going on with these new transportation facilities. There are going to be new, even more construction activities, I think, at the Carson City Airport. We looked at the economic activity throughout the time from 2003 to 2018, through that time, and making things at 2018 prices. This is kind of a cumulative economic impact. It's about $22 million in economic activity. Hiring jobs, about 156 jobs, or about total $10 million in labor income. If you look at that with the economic impact, because construction has economic impacts and what those are, it's about $31 million in total economic activity from construction activities, 222 jobs, and about $13 million in labor. This is something consistent I've seen in many of the public services we do, that they have a big multiplier because they create other linkages locally, and they will also provide an opportunity for expansion. So the summation of all these, basically looking at the Carson City, all these, is about, it's very much like I see a lot of public sectors. You go and ask some people in Clark County, what's the largest employer? It's a Clark County school district. And so there's many things in public entities that look small, but they're very big because they have big linkages in local economy. Same thing here for the airport. The summation of the Carson City Airport and related industries, those are related, and tourism and construction, it's about $48 million and about 343 employees and about $16 million in labor income. Looking at the economic impacts and linkages, it's about $67 million total. It's a very significant part, about 498 jobs and about $22 million in income because of those economic linkages. Additional observations, basically, like I said, not only is the economic impact important, but I also say the presence of the airport makes this region attractive. Because when people, especially now with new ways of doing business, when they look at location or relocation, they're looking at proximity to the airport because of linkages to larger areas. Also I'd say with the expansion of the Tahoe-Reno Industrial Complex, whatever that might happen to be, that's going to cause other linkages that will spill over to, like I said, a complex of airports. It's not Reno by itself or Silver Springs, no. It's going to also be Carson City. And I would say right now, I bet you the activity has expanded a lot just because of the legislature being in town and all that entails. And so it's very much when people go out and do look for economic expansion, they always are looking for airports. These impacts demonstrate it's a critical player, not only in current, but also I'd say future, because transportation, there's going to be more and more, I think, airports are going to be doing, big ones as well as small ones. Economic development agencies and business groups, I think, should be aware of the importance of the Carson City Airport. It's a key partner, it's a primary sector, I think, for future economic development because of the key of transportation and ease of transportation. People have found that transportation of goods and services, but also of this gig economy I talk about, is sometimes that transportation is very big because people can travel and make further business. Things are going to be changing in the future. So I went that pretty fast, but in essence, I appreciate you having me have time. I'd be glad to answer any questions. This airport is a part of the whole, there's a whole system. I always look at this, it's just not one industry by itself. It's a whole things that grow together. You have the state government, but with its linkage to other things like the airport and the hospital and other, make this a viable economy and also what I call quality of life. And so that's what I think is very important, not only the economic numbers, but how this plays in the quality of life of Carson City. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tom, and I'm sure probably have some questions. And let me just say this to Ken Moan. You know, you and I joke with each other, but I want to thank you for thinking out of the box. And I know, when you first took your job here, that one of the issues is increasing the economic viability of the airport and surrounding areas, and realizing that marketing the economics of our airport. From what I see happening here, you're doing a great job at that, Ken. So thanks for thinking out of the box. Now I have a question for you, or Tom. Where are we on IFR? Can we ever get IFR into the airport here?
Well, that dovetails real nicely into what my comments were going to be. As you know, I've been here about 10 months, and so I've been part of several current initiatives. One is the master plan that we're in the process of completing. We also initiated a strategic plan for the Airport Authority Board that we approved last night. And then about November, the board approved to conduct a feasibility study into nighttime instrument approach operations at Carson City Airport. As you know, we don't have a lot of instrument flight weather days here in Carson City, but we have night every day. So it's critical that in a mountainous area that pilots have the ability to navigate hazardous terrain and safely land at the airport. This is a 24/7 operation. However, many of the type of operators that we'd like to see come here, whether it's operators for casinos and other businesses throughout the state that come back and forth from Las Vegas, they end up going through Reno. And the time involved in that is a 40-minute drive each way, not to mention what happens if you're on commercial flight. You got to go through the TSA maze on both ends. And so consequently, with state and city workers traveling back and forth to Las Vegas to conduct business, that there's a lot of time that's wasted in between, and as we know, time is money. So we thought it was critical as an organization to look at the instrument approach issue and see if we can mitigate that. We're about halfway through the study. The idea is that the study will be done in February. The initial response is that it looks very favorable. There'll be some sort of instrument approach lighting system that will help mitigate those issues. And there's obviously going to be a capital investment required for that. And most of that will be FAA grant eligible. And of course, we do have local matches to make those grants effective and viable. So we're thinking that we're going to have good news on that coming up in February. Part of the government shutdown rolled part of that process, working with the Flight Standards Division. But once that logjam breaks, we feel that this will be able to have a positive effect for the airport. Real briefly, but the next initiative we have, of course, is the 2019-20 budget process that we'll be undertaking, as all of you are right at this point in time. But from Mr. Harris's, Professor Harris's presentation, Carson City Airport is a vital piece of the economic pie here in the city. And I thought by getting this benchmark from where we are currently, we'd be able to measure our future performance based upon the development of our strategic plan. The initial numbers that you saw that were produced by the airport and labor income, that's because there's 2 employees at the airport for the airport authority. Those other businesses involve maintenance, flight training, hangar storage. Mountain West Aviation provides fuel and other services, and so those pieces just continue to grow. So the airport authority to operate with 2 people is a pretty amazing economic output for that small of a operation. But it's critical that we as an organization continue in a city to invest in our facilities. If we drove by East College Parkway and looked at the airport and that was our state capitol building as we drove down South Carson Street, I think that we would all maybe turn around and head the other direction. We want to be able to reflect the city and the state capitol, and I think that's something that we really need to look at as we go into our strategic planning process and master plan. It is obviously a revenue generator for the city, and I think it's a real appropriate time to ask the board to, the cooperative agreement that we have with the city is 30 years old, and it's due to be renegotiated, and I think that's a good time to initiate those discussions as we proceed on this path, and I would like to leave that with the board today.
Very good. We'll make sure that we follow up with you on the MOU between us. So, let me ask you another question. How are you doing on airport safety?
Well, that's one of our top priorities, and I think that'll come through in our strategic plan. Airport safety and security has got to be at the top of everything we do. And that's why the investments have primarily been in the airfield side through the FAA grant process. A lot of these other facilities aren't eligible for those kind of grants, and so those funds have to come from where we generate them locally. So pavement and pavement maintenance is top priority, and that's one of the things we undertook this summer, this fall, by the time the construction began. It has been further delayed till the completion will be in May 6th when we complete the rest of the pavement rejuvenation. But runways was rebuilt, as you know, and about 10 years ago. Taxiways, the main aprons are all in really good shape, and that's where we put most of our efforts and resources right now are on security and maintenance.
We have some questions up here. John, is that you? Yeah, John.
As the liaison member from this board to the airport authority, first of all, I want to thank you. We gave out certificates of appreciation to our employees for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. I think you should get a 10-month employee certificate because you've done wonders for us in just a very brief period of time. I also want to thank previous boards for getting this airport going. And it was, I think, mostly from my reading of history, an effort to serve the industry out around the airport, and that's worked very well. But I think it's time for us, as you said earlier, to make the next step. I'd like to ask either of you or both of you to take a flying leap at something that's really not quantifiable and tell us what you think night flight coming in here would do for in terms of revenues or whatever you want to talk about.
When I talk with local pilots and operators, the thing I hear is, okay, we're scheduled to leave Florida at 11 a.m., so that puts us now really at 2 p.m. here in Nevada, and our flight time is 3 hours, so now it's 5. What time is sunset? And so many of those aircraft that are insured by various companies require them to utilize instrument approaches when they're available. And with the restriction of the instrument approach not being able to initiate that after sunset, that will require them to go and land somewhere else. And primarily that would be Reno. And so inconvenient. You're based here, Carson. You got to fly to Reno. You land. You got to get a car. You got to get back. Had a great example just the other day. Clickbond's airplane. The weather was inclement, and so based upon that, they didn't have the minimum for the approach, but it was late, so it was already after sunset, and they ended up landing at Silver Springs and then having Cape Bennett give them a ride back into town. Very inconvenient. That's not the way to run a modern aviation facility. And being the state capital, and I emphasize this continually in all of my discussions, we need to be a 21st century airport. And that is what our objective is as we move forward.
Is it not true that the state does fly in here at night sometimes?
Well, what they can do is they can cancel their instrument flight plan and then go VFR. And when they perceive visually, they're not having course guidance. So basically it's pilot knowledge, local area knowledge that really assists them. Where you do get bigger challenges is when you're dealing with people that aren't familiar with flying in mountainous terrain. As you know, my previous career was an air traffic controller at Reno, so I dealt with this issue throughout my whole 25 years there, where people would try to get underneath layers of clouds or try to duck in, and they often find themselves in difficult situations. And that's what safety and security, that's what we want to mitigate. And these are minimal investments when you consider the overall impact of lives, property, and other items around the airport.
Yeah, Tom, did you want to take a flyer on 10%, 20%?
Some kind of percent. Everett Dirksen, me and there, and you talk about $1 million. To echo, and maybe Ken, you can add it too. What's happening in business, what I understand, is time means money, and going through TSA and all that takes a lot of time, and a lot of businesses are doing private airplanes to come. And if you're looking for economic development for other businesses that use airplanes, private, I would call it, I guess that's what private airs, you need that instrument flying because people come from different time zones. We're an international economy, and so having that ability expands what opportunities. And quite frankly, people fly who are recreation fly on a whim maybe, and if you have where they can fly in at night and go up to Lake Tahoe or here or whatever, it even adds to it. Like I said, there's a little change in I think the business of air business. So I've seen Reno, where private air is kind of increasing. I say almost every metropolitan because of that, and corporate planes and people are flying in, and so. It's one of those things that you have availability expands the customer base, and that customer base has a lot of funds, and so people will fly in, but you're not going to fly in visually at night if you don't know anything about the mountains.
Thank you for that. I thank you especially for mentioning Everett Dirksen. As a native of Illinois who spent a quarter of a century there, I remember Everett very well, and I appreciate what you had to say because the thing I remember about living in Nebraska for 35 years is that Warren Buffett went out and bought NetJets because he was using it. He didn't want to own a corporate jet, but he wanted to have a way to save time going from place to place. And so you're right, these high-level executives and well-off tourists do like to fly and save time. That's it for me.
Being from Oklahoma State, when we played Nebraska, you wouldn't believe the airplanes that flew into Stillwater. But it is. I mean, people, they talk about, I mean, in Las Vegas when they have things, they're just planes loading up at McCarran. Same thing here. When we have sporting events or other events, maybe Reno fills up. They may want to stay here and then go to whatever sporting event's going on in Reno. So having that instrument, boy, just to me, it expands the customer base for here and also it expands the customer base for economic development in this town.
Well, thank you for that, because economic development is where we all want to head with that. Our CTA, our tourism authority, has marketed us as the center, and we can go up to Tahoe or up to Reno or out into the empty quarter because it's cheaper to stay here than it is at Reno. There's just no doubt about it, and so this is a great opportunity for us.
Supervisor Giomi. Stacy.
Thank you. On the economic impact, when you looked at that, is that a regional economic impact? I mean, I know there's an airport in Silver Springs. I know there's an airport in Dayton. I know there's an airport in Minden. But is that impact regional?
It's study. What we do is we did a study area, and with these models, we developed just a Carson City economy, and so it's just here in Carson City. And so if you purchase something, paper products outside in Reno, we now consider that as part. Working with Ken, we were able to get what percentage of their operations were purchased here locally, and so that's what we end up doing. And so it's Carson City, yes.
Okay, and then as a follow-up, Ken, have you had even anecdotal conversations with anyone at the state or feedback from them that nighttime flying or IFR flying would be beneficial, or is it just sort of, as I said, anecdotal from your observations?
It's direct conversations with people in NDOT, also with operators that are here temporarily, my connections with operators that operate out of Reno instead. I'm part of the Carson City Airport is part of the Nevada Airports Association, so all those people that we mingle with and converse with regularly about these type of things, this has been a critical component to that. It's basically like saying that your airport's you're saying you're open 24/7, but you're only really available part of the day. And a lot of activity takes place at night when you're doing medical transports and things of that nature. And our proximity to the Carson Tahoe Hospital has been critical for that, and routinely those kind of operations occur. And so they're flying by the seat of their pants at that time.
Is Lear 25 still flying out there?
Pardon me?
Is that noisy Lear 25 still flying?
I haven't heard it recently, but one of the points I wanted to make is that regarding NetJets and FlexJets and Surf Air and all these other type of operators, if you all recall, when we bought our first PC, we bought something that had the power of maybe our handheld calculator today, and that cost us several $1,000s. The same thing's happened in the aviation industry. New technology, new composites, all that thing has driven down the prices of those type of aircraft, and the ability to operate them are cheaper now. And so that's why you're seeing that growth in the aviation side. The flexibility of not having to go through the commercial side of the airport, the security piece, the scheduling, and all that is saving these businesses money in the way that they conduct their transportation, their executives, meetings, gaming control boards right down the street from us. People have to come up from Las Vegas regularly for that, and we want to encourage those people to come to Carson City to buy fuel, to park, to have maintenance done, to eat in our restaurants, stay in our community, where if they're driving back and forth to Reno, that's really becomes problematic. And that was played out when Mike Pence came to the airport in October. They had to commute back and forth as well. So I'm sure one of their top priorities is not a 45-minute convoy between Reno and Carson City in order to have an event for an hour.
So maybe we can ask the good Vice President for a little grant help.
Well, I think this is where it's really critical, because we do get FAA grants, but it's critical that we as a community speak with one voice when we're talking about the airport and how we support the airport. This is a cooperative effort between the airport authority. We're the operator on behalf of the city still owns the land. And so this is really a conversation that if we only have it on one side of the room, which is on our board meetings on one night, and we don't share that information, have that conversation on this side on the following day here on Thursdays, then we're really missing the boat on a key economic component to the city.
Said it better than I could. Supervisor Barrett?
Thank you. I forgot this question, but this conversation leads to it. Would you share with the board and with the public exactly how this night flight effort we're making to get the FAA on board? It's a change in the approach, is it not?
Well, the biggest change is providing some visual guidance further out from the runway. So currently, what we have at the end of the runway, we have runway identifier lights, and there's also a system called the Precision Approach Path Indicator, PAPI. And you can't see that until you get to a certain distance from the airport. The PAPI provides you vertical guidance, but when you're flying the instrument approach, at a certain point, you have to pick up ground reference. So if we establish some lighting arrays that are further out from the airport, and we're talking within 3 miles or less, there's a light. Come next a mile, there's another light, and et cetera. Those are above ground. They'll probably, if you can picture where the dump is, I think there's one of the locations out there, and then there's a couple of poles that they've identified on the way in that we could utilize putting these light arrays on. The community would not be aware that those are even really operating. That's how obtuse they would be to the rest of the community. But it would allow them to pick up ground reference points further out and then be able to establish visual contact with the airport. That's ultimately what they have to do anyway. They have, if you get to what you call a Cat 3 ILS, we'd never have anything like that. We don't have the land for it. We don't have the funds to match that kind of thing. And so this is really a mitigating effort and something that you couldn't have done 10, 15 years ago.
Very good. Any other questions? Ken or Tom? Anybody? Any public comment want to weigh in on this one? I don't see any. Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Ken. And your words of, I think all of us up here, want to make sure that we're not creating economic silos in Carson City so that we all work together on all the different economic activity centers we've got. You're doing a great job. Keep it up. You're welcome anytime here. And same to you, Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you for your indulgence. I know that we probably went over the allotted time, but I apologize for that. But
that's what we're here for. It's okay. Thanks, Ken. All right. All right.
Sherry.
All right, you ready? Let us know when you're ready. While you're setting up, I'll just introduce the agenda item. This is potential discussion and potential adoption of a resolution to augment and amend the Carson City FY 2018-2019 budget in the amount of $49,666,202. Sounds like a lot of money, just kind of moving money around.
It does sound like a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yes, we are moving money around. Basically, the main purpose of this augmentation, we do 2 a year. This is the first one of the year. This is primarily to roll forward budget that was unused in 18 into 19. So restricted funds from 18 into 19. So we're basically moving authority from last year into this year. We'll also add any appropriations for grants that are new or were unused last year as well. And we're moving around money for anything approved by IFC or the board in the last 6 months as well. So I'm just going to go over some of the larger funds, but as I go through, please feel free to stop me if you have a question. So first, the general fund, our main operating fund. I'm going to talk about the fund balance working capital column there first. And the total augmentation to this budget from fund balance is $3,137,761. Basically, our audited 6/30/2018 fund balance amount was $12,150,000, and then our estimated 2019 beginning budget was only $9 million. So we're just getting that beginning balance up to the audited amount. So we're adding that $3,137,761 to the budget. Now, 1.1 million of that 3 million is restricted or assigned for specific purposes. So these are NRS restrictions, donations that we get from people that have to be used for a specific purpose. There's also an additional 300,000 that were for projects that were not yet completed. One of them being this lovely Sierra room that's starting tomorrow. And then the other project was the courts, updating their audio visual system. So the largest of that restricted money, there's 368,000 for courts. That's actually NRS restricted funds. And then I talked about they have 206,000 for courtroom upgrades. 135,000 about for parks donations. That's different programs at the parks that have to roll forward. I talked about the Sierra room upgrade, that's 102,000 rolling forward. And then with the rest of the capital in 19 already, we'll make the rest of that budget. Do you have a question?
Maybe to help cut to the chase a little bit, in the general fund, how about we talk about what is not just pure additional money that can go wasn't previously allocated. So we got about an additional $1.7 million than we anticipated. I think that's more interesting to the public than the projects. Yeah, we got good money.
So after all those restrictions at the bottom there, in the contingency, we added $1.7 million, which is available for contingency. That's used for appropriations for capital, extraordinary maintenance, increases, the fund balance reserve, whatever the board directs us to use that for. The transfers column, the transfers from contingency I've highlighted in yellow just to make them more clear. The largest one was we moved the landfill actual dollars was actually more than we had budgeted. So we had to move 333,000 about more into landfill from capital projects. And then we reduced the ambulance transfer for the BLS program because it's actually covering its own costs now. So we don't have to make that transfer from the general fund anymore.
Say that again, please.
The BLS, it's the service we started.
Basic life support?
Basic life support. We started that service last year, I believe. It's only been up and running for, I think, a year. And it's covering its own costs.
I may be out of line with this one, but is that, we can get reimbursed through either Medicare or Medicaid for BLS services?
Yes, ambulance and BLS. Yeah. And then there's the additional revenue. That was pretty minor in the general fund. Just, where are my notes? Got me off track here. We received a donation from the state for elections, for some publications for the elections, and then we got state pass-through money for misdemeanor treatment. That was the bulk of that additional revenue. And then, also in the transfers, we moved money around a little bit. The TriNet grant, we added the grant offset and then the expenses. That grant's taken care of in the grant fund, but we expend the money in the general fund. And then the community support, every year we have just a board designated. When you guys make that decision, then we move it into the appropriate accounts. So that's really all I had on the general fund. As we move down, the airport is about 600,000. That's for projects going on at the airport. It's just an in and out. It's FAA money, so we get the money passed on to the airport. Capital Projects Fund. We had a carryover of prior year fund balance, so that's already budgeted projects that were not completed last year. Moving into the current year, $2.3 million about. They were not completed as of 6/30/18. Most of them are probably completed today, but we just need to match those budget dollars with the actual dollars. We have a couple transfers there that mainly come from the IFC decisions, and then of course your board decisions too on using our break fix fund. We had additional revenue from the landfill, as I talked about before, and then a little bit of surplus sales. Basically, at the end of the day in this fund, our break fix will be $387,000 through fiscal year 19. So that's what we got left in break fix through the rest of the year, which is pretty good. We're pretty happy with that. The Regional Transportation Fund, we have $7.6 million in federal and state grants that were budgeted last year, rolling forward to this year, or new. We do have some new grants in there. And then there's $757,000 that's going to be an undesignated well, I think it's called transportation infrastructure, but that's basically, we haven't figured out a project for that yet. I'm sure they have. We just haven't moved it there yet. And then I wanted to point out a couple little weird things at the bottom of this. There's a Complete Streets program that we have, and we're moving, initially we're using those for the downtown street project. However, we've decided that the state wants better reporting. So in order to track it better, we're going to leave the money in the 250 fund, and so the expenses match the revenue. So that's all that's doing, is taking it out of the infrastructure fund and bringing it back into the regional transportation fund. So as we move on to the quality of life, we got $2.5 million in federal and state grants for open space and parks capital, the biggest of that being the SNPLMA. We have $963,000 carryover for unfinished projects from last year that'll be added. And then in total, the undesignated here, it goes to basically the land acquisition account. It's 1.3, well, almost 1.4 million. So street maintenance is the next one. That's basically just putting whatever the savings were plus extra taxes received that we were unanticipated, about $560,000 to the undesignated projects. Infrastructure tax fund, we have about $2.9 million we're rolling forward of the corridor projects. That's from the 1/8 cent sales tax. The grant fund, we have about $3 million we're carrying forward of grant appropriations from last year, or new grants. You can see, I think the majority of them are new grants that we didn't budget for yet. 911 surcharge, this made quite a bit more money than was anticipated because they had that raise in the fee that we're charging for that. So we have $200,000 that's remaining in undesignated, but we're doing $105,000 to update the dispatch workstations, which hasn't been done for a long time. And then we're increasing the body camera service maintenance as well to match with the actual expenses. Stormwater drainage, that's just $4.8 million. That's the bond we got last year, so we're putting that on the books and putting it into the projects. Sewer fund, rolling forward quite a bit there. We've got almost $10 million in projects carried forward. We actually increased the depreciation here because we had a budget violation last year. So we've increased that $1.4 million to try to avoid the budget violation. And then we have the new generators in there. That's the new revenues, the $325,000. That's the new generators, the grant for that. Water, we're rolling forward $10 million in that as well. This one's a little funny. It's the bond proceeds for the crossover refunding. So we want to put the proceeds in the revenue column, but we don't want to spend that money because in 2020 we have to pay the bonds off. So that's why it looks a little it's reducing fund balance, but it's just not going into an expense. We're carrying over water projects of $2.3 million though. That is what we're doing. And then we've also got the emergency generators there, the new revenue of $1.1 million. And then the insurance fund, we had to increase expenses $116,000 for just the under anticipation of what the increase was in the insurance rates. Did you want me to talk about RDA real quick? Okay.
We got that coming up here, but
It's the next item. I just don't know if you
I
want
think
me
we
to do
better
it all
take
at once or split them up.
well, I think you better take them because there's different bodies.
Okay.
We'll take RDA on its own.
Okay.
All right.
That's all I had for you then.
Board members, any questions? Public comment, anybody want to weigh in on this one? I don't see any. We ready for a motion?
Yep.
Motion's over. Supervisor Bagwell.
What's the resolution number?
2019 R-1.
Okay, I move to adopt resolution number 2019 R1, a resolution to augment and amend the Carson City fiscal year 2018-19 budget in the amount of $49,666,202.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay. We're now going to recess as a Board of Supervisors. And Dan, you've got to help me. We don't have a chair, so this goes to the vice chair? How do you want to do that on redevelopment authority?
Yeah, since we don't have a chair, we can just go to the vice chair.
So you want me to do that? I think
That's me.
that's you. You do that. Okay. All right. So we're going to recess as the Board of Supervisors. I'm going to hand the gavel to Supervisor Bagwell, who's the vice chair of redevelopment. How's that? You want the placard too?
No. Okay. Redevelopment Authority to order, and let the record reflect that all members are present and we have a quorum, since we did that earlier this morning. Do we have any public comment for the Redevelopment Authority? Okay. Then we're on item number 17, approval of the minutes. Has everyone had a chance to look at that?
I move approval of the minutes of December 6, 2018.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay. For the resolution for the augmentation.
All righty, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So on the redevelopment, the biggest augmentation is in the revolving fund, 603. So that is taking any extra tax revenue that we received in the tax increment, the 604 fund, and adding that revenue to 19. So we've rolled forward that money into facade improvements based on promises we made to people last year. We want to make sure the money is there to pay them when they come back to us. We also rolled forward some money that we didn't spend, the Blue Line rehabilitation, the downtown entry signs, and then we've got $278,000 from the downtown street project that's already spent because that's done now. And then there's the theater project of $147,794. That's about it.
Have any questions? Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, I'll take a motion then.
Resolution number?
2019 RA R1.
I move to adopt Resolution 2019 R1, a resolution to augment and amend the Carson City Redevelopment Authority fiscal year 18-19 budget in the amount of $617,971.
There's a motion and a second on the item. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you.
To elect a chair and vice chair of the Redevelopment Authority for a one-year term ending December 31st, 2019. I don't know if it says Nancy, but I think it's a pretty clear item. So any discussion, Mr. Barrett?
Yeah, I nominate Lori Bagwell for chairman of redevelopment. She served on the Redevelopment Authority Citizens Committee, which I serve on now, but I don't want it.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to appoint me as the chair of the Redevelopment Authority. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? I guess that's me.
I'll nominate Stacy Giomi as the vice chair.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to nominate Stacy Giomi, as the vice chair of the Redevelopment Authority. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 19B, which is the appointment of a member as the business operator or property owner to fill a term expiring in January of 2022. Ms. Paulson?
Yes, there was just one new application, and that was submitted by Angela Bolentini-Wolf. I don't believe she is present today.
What's the board's pleasure? Do we want to do an appointment or wait for her to come?
My preference would be to at least hear and talk to somebody before we appoint them.
Was she notified of the meeting? I'm not sure.
I'm assuming she was, but I'm not sure if she was told she needed to be here. I'll have to check on that.
Because I really actually agree with Supervisor Bonkowski. I think we should talk to the person, but how about the rest of the board?
Question.
Okay with that?
Question is when?
Bring it back later if by chance we can get ahead of it?
Come in later in the day?
Right.
When is the next meeting for that organization?
The beginning of February.
But we have a quorum of that group without this position being filled on that meeting? Okay. Okay, so we'll go ahead. If the rest of the board's okay, we'll table this item. We're on to the final public comment. Do we have any public that would like to comment on anything to do with the Redevelopment Authority? No?
I'd just like to weigh in and say it's really nice to see a Republican in charge of ICE.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm going to let that go. Is there any other comment?
Ain't gonna hear a word out of me.
Yeah, that one's done. Okay, then we're on for adjournment. Nobody's opposed. We're adjourned as the Redevelopment Authority. And thank you.
We're going to call a meeting of the Board of Supervisors back to order. We're now on item number 23, Community Development Planning. Lee, you ready to go for this? You need time to set up? All right.
Good morning. Lee Plumwell, Community Development Director, also presenting to you today as one of the liquor license hearings officers. We've just committed at the board's request to give you a report every annually on this. It's been 2 years now. We've been assigned as a hearings officer to approve liquor licenses. And this report that's in your packet is for the last year, for 2018. You have the information. Just quickly, just some highlights. As I said, we've been doing it for 2 years. Last year, we approved 15 liquor licenses total. Most of those are actually not new liquor licenses, or that includes the change of liquor managers when people change out. But just to point out, we have had some new licenses for Gather, the downtown restaurant, Saffron, also downtown Martin Hotel and Squeeze In were new businesses that opened and new liquor licenses. I think the others were existing businesses where they were just changing liquor manager, or somebody new bought the business. We also report on alcohol server compliance. If there are 3 violations within a year, they end up back before the liquor hearings officers as well. And the sheriff's office conducted the checks in May and October of last year, and there were one violation the first time, 3 the second. They were all first offenses last year. The server that serves the violation actually gets a citation from the sheriff, and also these penalties that are in the code are the penalties to the business. So these 4 were issued first offense violations in 2018. Available for just a brief, as I said, brief report.
We do have Supervisor Bonkowski.
Just a comment. I think I just heard you say you'd have to have 3 offenses within a 12-month period to have your license come up for possible revocation. But we only do 2 compliance checks a year, so it would be impossible for anybody to get 3 checks, wouldn't it?
Yeah, the compliance checks are done through the sheriff's office, and I was out unexpectedly a couple of days this week, so I didn't get a chance to give him a heads up on this and invite him here in case he had any questions on that. But I think, I don't want to speak for them, but I know in the past, the list of violators has been higher in past years. So perhaps part of them not doing multiple compliance checks in a year is that they're not getting a lot of first offense violations. It's possible. I know from the looking back at the history, there were more violations per day sting operation, or whatever you want to call it, in the past.
It's an interesting comment. Okay, any other board questions? Mr. Plemmel? Public comment? Anybody want to weigh in? Anybody out there who's been cited wants to talk about it? No? Okay, I don't hear any. All right. All right, let's take up item 24, Parks and Rec. Got a lot on the agenda today. Who's doing the first one here? 24 Alpha is to authorize the fee title acquisition of 20 acres along the north side of US Highway 50 West. This property belongs to Michael Fagan. We've been looking at this for a number of years. You want to tell us where we are on this, Ms. Bollinger?
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor, Board of Supervisors. For the record, Ann Bollinger, Open Space Administrator. And I just have 2 slides here to help illustrate for the board and for members of the public the property that we are talking about. It is 20 acres located along Highway 50 West near the Golf Club interchange, highlighted on the map here. Because it's 20 acres, it is so small on the map for the greater map of Carson City. So that property is right near the bottom. The blue is already Carson City owned land, and the green is Forest Service. So the subject property is adjacent to other public lands, and it's also part of this bigger puzzle that we're looking at for the region of potentially acquiring the Clear Creek parcel, also adjacent to it on the south side of Highway 50, and a few other conservation transactions to the north, including Old Woods Ranch, and even possible discussions with the Shoals Investment. So it's still a larger piece of this puzzle. The values of this property for the public are scenic qualities. It is right adjacent to Highway 50. So as you're driving in from Lake Tahoe and the gateway down into Carson City, you could maybe just imagine if there was a single-family house built on the hillside. Development is fine, but maybe it's fine in designated areas. Other values are wildlife habitat and recreation. Our ultimate goal is to link trails from Douglas County to Kings Canyon and Carson City, and with the topography, with the elevation, this is one of those properties right in the middle of that piece of the puzzle that we're looking to connect. Mr. Michael Fagan is here with us. I would like to thank him for his patience as we have worked through this process. We have been working on this project for almost 5 years, since 2014. I have brought a number of items in front of the board. We started working on this project during the recession, and so Michael Fagan gave us an option of any possible trades with other city properties. We went through that exercise and we just could not find anything that for one reason or another was compatible. Oftentimes our properties have various restrictions. So that was not an option. I applied for 2 grants. I was unsuccessful. I have a 90% success rate, but in this case I was not successful. And so he's been patient with us. And then about a year ago, I asked Nevada Land Trust to help me out, to help keep this project moving along. They did hire an appraiser for us, Miss Cindy Lunn with Johnson Perkin and Associates, who determined a market value of $290,000. She did conclude the highest and best use of this property is a single-family home site. Nevada Land Trust also helped complete the Phase 1 environmental site survey, and there were no items of concern on the property. They reviewed the water and mineral rights, they helped with communication with the landowner, and they will help with the assign at closing. So the property will transfer directly to Carson City with the purchase. The value, as I mentioned, is $290,000. It will be funded solely from the Quality of Life Initiative, the open space tax that was passed by the voters in 1996. Our current balance is $512,000, and as our CFO, Sherry Russell, just mentioned, we did have a balance that we requested to carry over from last year of nearly $1.4 million. So we have been saving money. We've been trying to leverage money so we could do projects just like this. The cost of management on this property is very low. That is one of the best benefits to the Carson City residents. As open space, there's very limited development. It's native vegetation, native trees. The fire danger on it is low. There are no noxious weeds. There's only a little bit of cheatgrass on the property. Because there is not access, there's no roads, we do not have problems with illegal dumping. Maybe our one little problem might be roadside trash, since it is adjacent to Highway 50. I did like how the ESA, the Phase 1, stated that this property is basically in pristine condition. There's no evidence of any development ever throughout history. So to wrap that up, Mr. Mayor, again, I'd like to thank Mr. Fagan for his patience through this process and Nevada Land Trust with their assistance.
We have a couple of questions up here. Supervisor Bunkowski, then Supervisor Giome.
And so this budget item is to approve $290,000 for the acquisition, but it looks like we're going to owe Nevada Land Trust about $7,800, plus we have closing costs that need to be covered. Do you have a total figure on what those costs are, and do we need to include that appropriation as part of this item?
Nevada Land Trust has been paid throughout the process through our professional services line item. So we have already paid that amount, and I don't know if Ms. Raban, if she has any idea of what our closing costs are at this time. No. Okay.
But we will have the closing costs.
We will have closing costs. Estimated to be about $2,000, she said.
As I looked through the packet, it talked about access to Highway 50, and I just wanted to confirm that access transfers with the sale.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
just want to make sure of that. And can you briefly talk about connectivity? You did a little bit talk about connectivity, but is it in the Unified Trails Master Plan, this
Yes.
component of it?
Yes, it is.
Just refresh my.
Yes,
yeah,
thank
perfect,
you.
thank you.
Is Mr. Fagan here? I just want to say on behalf of the board here, Michael, that we want to thank you for working with us on Horse Creek Ranch and all that area up there. It's a big deal for our community, and I don't know if there's any place that's prettier than walking up there and looking out over that little valley and towards Job's Peak over that ranch. It's unbelievable. I mean, when we talk about God's country, that's what it is. So thanks for working with us. Thanks, because it's a big deal for our community, a big deal for you as well, but it's a big deal for our community and our quality of life here and what we enjoy. So thank you. Supervisor Bagwell, go.
And I'm just, do you anticipate that we'll have to put any money in to do a future improvement just so that the public is aware, we're not just purchasing the property, we actually have a plan because it's going to be parking lot maybe? I don't know. What's the plan? Just so the public's aware of why we're buying it.
Sure. The primary hope is this property will only have a single track trail, with the hope that a trailhead facility will be south of Highway 50 on the Clear Creek property. The reason for that is it's a larger property and it can better accommodate a trail, be a little bit larger in size to accommodate equestrian trailers. If we absolutely need to build a trailhead here because we have no other option, we can. There is a little bench, but it would be a smaller parking lot, probably similar to up Highway 50 on the Tahoe Rim Trail, and accommodate maybe only 10 to 15 cars.
Any other questions? Anybody else want to weigh in? Mr. Scott, how you doing this morning?
Fine, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bruce Scott, here just very briefly on behalf of the Open Space Committee. This has been a long process, as you've heard. You've heard it many times, and we've heard it more. We don't like to pay 100% of our own money for properties, but we feel this is an exception and a very important piece in the puzzle, as Ann described it. So I'd be afraid if you asked me questions, but I would try to answer them. I just wanted to say that this is an important element and to make it clear that we work very hard to find matching monies and grants to make our acquisitions. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Bruce. We have run the Open Space Committee through the ringer on this particular property, basically rejecting your ask time after time to ask you to go back and look for the exchange properties, which we had 2 that we reviewed, and there were issues with both, and then the grants, one after another that we weren't able to achieve. So I want to thank you guys for being patient, and you too, Mr. Fagan, for being patient while we feel like we're doing our due diligence and looking outside the box for every different avenue to try to help out with the acquisition here and not use 100% of our own money. But at the end of the day, it is an important piece. We do need to have it, and we've exhausted every other avenue. So at this point, we need to move forward.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Public comment, anybody? Thank you, Bruce, very much, and tell your board thank you as well for all the work they do. All right. Board, are we ready?
Yep.
Yeah, I got
Motion's
it.
in order. Who wants to do it?
Me. You.
I'll do it, if you're good.
Let me withdraw mine. Go ahead.
Stacy, jump in there.
I move to authorize the fee title acquisition of 20 acres of property described on the record and authorize the mayor or his designee to execute all related documents on behalf of the city and further to authorize the city to pay closing costs.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. I don't have it up here, but you get me? I don't know where it is. Let me see. Okay. Count me in as an aye. All right. All right. Anything further on this one? Because we're going to take a break. Okay, we'll be in recess for 10 minutes. We're going to bring the meeting of the Board of Supervisors back to order. We're now at item 24, Bravo. This is to create a task force for the purpose of reviewing the Carson City rifle and pistol range, third-party safety assessments, and making recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. Jennifer, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good.
How are you?
Go.
Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. I thought before we started the item today, I'd just give you a brief background so you knew how we got to where we are today, and for the benefit of the public as well, if you'll just indulge me for a couple minutes. So as you know, the city received reports of bullets found in the landfill. Also reports of bullets being heard overhead at the landfill that was reported to us not only from city staff, club members, but contractors working at the landfill as well. For those that don't know, the landfill is located just east of the Carson Rifle and Pistol Range. In response to this, the city took it very seriously. This is a potential public safety issue, and we needed to gather more information, but we also needed to protect the public at the same time. So in cooperation with the Carson Rifle and Pistol Club, who are our cooperative partners for this facility, we implemented a temporary and reduced operating schedule in the interest of public safety. The club was very gracious and provided volunteer range safety officers to help educate the public and ensure that when activity was conducted at the range that it met standards. We were educating new users and making sure that they were shooting responsibly while at the range. Also, in addition, we contacted the NRA, we filed a case, and we requested a range safety assessment from the National Rifle Association. The club agreed to share costs in that effort and was willing to partner with us in seeking professional and technical expertise on assessing our range. I also contacted the Nevada Department of Wildlife, which is our funding partner and has been so gracious and helpful in helping us do improvements at the range, and they contacted the National Shooting Sports Foundation in an effort to seek out a secondary assessment of the facility. We then held a public information meeting, and over 150 citizens attended. There's so many citizens that are passionate about this facility, use it on a daily basis, and really wanted to make sure that they were informed, but also give an opportunity for them to express their concerns as well. At the meeting, Supervisor Bagwell talked about the possibility of doing a working group and the potential option for utilizing that group to evaluate the assessment reports and provide potential solutions to the city so that citizens could work with us in trying to finding answers to resolving this potential problem. More than 40 people expressed interest in this, and I continue to get emails every day of people wanting to participate. So that's so wonderful to see the community wanting to come and work with us and try to help us and try to work together to solve this issue. Unfortunately, the NRA process just didn't follow the timeline we wanted. We wanted answers yesterday, and I think the public wanted answers yesterday. Maybe the day before that or months ago. They have limited resources as well, and I fully appreciate and understand that. But I did ask the NRA to provide us a list of potential private consultants. I sought quotes from 5 different consultants. We selected someone that had expertise in the area that we were seeking out and was highly recommended not only from the NRA but the Shooting Sports Foundation as well. We've had that third-party assessment conducted, and you all have copies of that. I just want to be very transparent. We've posted that not only adjacent to the agenda item today, we posted it on the Parks website as well, where we've posted all of the information from the information meeting, the maps, all of the data that we've collected regarding this situation. Anything that I have, I've put up on that website. So I just wanted to make sure that the public knows that that is available to them. The report was also provided to the club, and they've also distributed it through their social media site and let members know about that as well. The report does identify a lot of positive, wonderful things about our range. The consultant that came in was so impressed by the facility and said it's one of the nicest municipal facilities that he's seen. Despite that, there are some significant deficiencies identified in the report, and there's numerous items that identify that the facility does not meet the minimum recommended standards. So I just wanted to point point those things out. We are still seeking out the second assessment from the NRA. We feel it's really important, and I know NDOW felt really strongly that we had two separate independent assessments of the facility. And I did hear from the NRA today, the week of the 25th. We will have someone here, I don't have a specific day or time, doing the on-site assessment. I don't have an estimated time of when we get the written report after that on-site assessment. But at least they're back to us and we have something scheduled, so that's a positive. So today you will be considering the possibility of creating a task force to help us move forward. Should you decide to move forward with the task force, I just wanted to make a couple recommendations for your consideration on some key stakeholders that I think would be important to participate in the process. One would be NDOW. They've been our funding partner through the inception of this range. They continue to have funding available, and I think that would be an important piece to the puzzle and have their participation, support, and advocacy for the range. Also, a law enforcement representative. We have so many law enforcement agencies, not just our local sheriff's office, that use this facility for training to help improve and support our public safety. A member of the Carson Rifle and Pistol Club. The range would not be here without them. We've had an agreement with them for over 20 years, and perhaps they could select a member to participate. Also a Parks and Recreation Commission member or a Parks staff person. Some goals that you might consider for the task force would be to seek out a range architect or an engineer to provide an estimate of probable costs for improvements needed to get to the minimum recommended standards. Also develop a funding and implementation plan, nothing fancy, but just a concept of what is the funding plan for these improvements and what would be the priority or the phasing approach for implementation. And also to review the current operation and management and provide suggestions moving forward. And should something new be considered as far as operating. But I do think of the task force, I think the physical improvements need to be the priority because operations aside, we can't operate something safely without meeting the minimum standards. I'd also like you to consider to have the committee task force, however you want to call it, report regularly back to the Parks and Recreation Commission so that body could help support them and give them kind of vet any issues or items that they might need support on. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions of Ms. Budge? Anybody? Supervisor Barrett?
Yes, I listened to your running through the potential stakeholders for a task force, and I don't know if I didn't hear it or did, but I think a citizen at large would also be, because, for example, I had a barber who asked me, and I wondered what his reason for asking me was about this issue. And at the time I had the conversation, he said he rides his dirt bike out in that area. So he's concerned just as a guy who could find a bullet raining down on him. So do you think a citizen at large should be on there as well?
Thank you, Supervisor Barrett. I actually neglected to mention two of my other recommendations was appointed citizens representatives. Obviously, we have so many people interested, perhaps appointed by each member. I'm not sure how you want to go about that. And someone from the commercial sector would be really welcome for that public-private partnership and that commerce piece that might also find other funding sources than we typically reach out for.
Thank you.
And I think you've covered most of the potential stakeholders. I think you're probably going to hear that one or two members of the board here will want to sit on that task force as well, a minimum of one, potentially two. I think that the task force or committee or work group, whatever it ends up being called, is a great idea. A major concern for me is the transition between the creation of the work group and final implementation of improvements that will be needed to meet those minimum requirements. I don't believe that we should be closing the rifle range for the interim. I feel very strongly about that. I think that there is a solution here wherein we can eliminate the conflict between the landfill and the rifle and pistol range. Right now, the only conflict is on Saturdays. So the landfill's closed on Sundays, the range is open. On Saturdays, they're both still open. But I think that we can reduce that. At a minimum, it's got to stay open on Sundays. My preference would be to see if we can look at potentially splitting the day on Saturday, where the landfill would close early, say at noon. And I talked to Darren about this. He's going to look into it to see if there's a feasible way to make this happen, where the range would be open, say, from 12:30 on, and the landfill would close at noon. So we have that half an hour period in between, so that there's no conflict between the rifle range and the landfill. At the end of the day, what we're talking about is trading a theoretical risk that the range is not safe because it is unsupervised with open access, which is what the report says, and an actual risk if we shut the rifle range down for the interim before we can make these improvements. What we're doing is we're sending hundreds, if not thousands, of people into the surrounding countryside, into the canyons, into the gravel pits, wherever they can lay a target out at 100 yards, and they're going to be shooting up the countryside. And it's already happened in the last month out in Dayton, where somebody went into a gravel pit off of Enterprise Lane, started shooting, and had a bullet penetrate 4 walls of a house out in the Occidental area. So I think that self-policing works. I think that we can put additional signage up to get through the interim period, and if we can mitigate the risk between the landfill and the rifle range, I am very, very strongly, I cannot emphasize enough how strongly I feel we have to keep the rifle range open.
Go ahead.
So I kind of, I want to echo everything that Supervisor Baunkowski said. I think definitely, and I don't know, I can kind of serve both roles as a Park and Rec member and a Board of Supervisor, and then certainly Supervisor Baunkowski's been working with me heavily with the community at large, dealing with the range, so I think potentially we'd be good. I didn't hear you mention anyone from Public Works. Do you think that having someone that's an interested party in the landfill, because I think Brad's right that there may be some negotiations there, so potentially a member from that staff really instead of potentially a park staff? I think I'd rather work to a Public Works staff since it's their employees that are at issue. And then I like the idea of maybe each of us picking a member to serve, so it could be a citizen at large or a general one, because I know we got a list of 40 or so people that came to the meeting that we had. So if we can kind of limit it to 13 to 15 people, I guess I'm interested in making sure we don't have 40 people on a task force, because I don't think that's going to work either. But maybe if we each give one, and then the membership that we've discussed here today. And then I really like the idea of having maybe a dual report, while they're reporting to us any options, but please do include the Park and Rec Commission. They're going to, somehow I believe there's going to be some money needs within the results of this, so I'd like to include Park and Rec Commission and at least getting copies of the reports or presentations so that they can maybe help support where we're going to go here. I like that idea.
I would only amend that slightly in my view. Not only Public Works, but Parks and Rec should have someone, because it actually is under the purview of Parks and Rec. But yes, both of the agencies have a big involvement.
Well, I think we got to be careful not to get too many, but I think the goal is make sure that, on everything we do, and in particular this one, we need to be open and transparent and shine as much light on all the issues as we can. And I will say, we need to not only focus on the ability of people to use our range, which we need a range in Carson City, there's no doubt about that. We need a safe range, but it's important that we not just focus on the user of the range, but the people who are using the landfill. Right. That's the public safety, and the public has a right to think that they can go on public property and not be subject to potential stray ricochets or bullets. I think that's the case. So we got to walk both of those there. I mean, so we can't just focus on one. And I understand what Brad is saying, Supervisor Bunkowski is saying, that there's a lot of people who are going out and shooting in the off range, to put it like that. And that there was an issue with respect to a home that was hit. That's not. I understand that. On the other side of that, and Dan, you stop me if I'm wrong, our legal authority here, but once the city's been placed on notice that there's a potential safety violation there, if we don't do something about it, I think that raises the bar to avoid the statutory liability cap that local government and government takes or has right now, because it moves you from negligence to gross negligence, I think, or could make that argument fly better. So I think we need to be careful about that. The goal in my mind is to make sure that we have a gun range in this town and that it's a safe gun range. And we're going to have to find the money somewhere to do these things, but we need to do it, and we need the cooperation of everyone, not just not just the city folks, but our users and everybody to put their minds and hearts together to find out what's the best way, because at the end of the day, safety trumps everything. And again, I'll repeat it. Not only the users of the gun range not only should they know that they'll be safe if they go shoot there, and there's some concerns that there's not a berm, so there's a mix between the rifle and the pistol range. They have a right to know that they're participating in a safe range, and people who are using the public lands have a right to know that they can use those public lands without fear. Okay, so I'm all for a task force, anything that brings us together to get light and transparency and thoughts going on, and not in particular, but along with that, the money and how we're going to address these issues, because whatever we do, we have to address the issues, period. So, okay, my 2 cents. Go.
Yeah, I just want to clarify what Lori and I were saying earlier. Are you saying you want to be on this yourself and that you would represent Parks and Rec? And Jennifer, is that copacetic with you? Okay, then that's fine now that I understand what's going on here. But Public Works, yeah, I just wondered if you wanted somebody from your staff to be on it, or if Lori would suffice as a member of Parks and Rec. Thanks.
Yeah, I think the task force is a great idea. The only thing I'd like to add is that, because we're restricting access to the gun range and potentially restricting access to the landfill, that we work this on an accelerated basis, that we don't have meetings once every 3 months. I mean, we need to get to a resolution, and I think we need to get to a resolution as quickly and safely as we can. So that's my 2 cents. I'd like to see it happen sooner rather than later.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Jen, before we take public? Yes.
Okay,
Jennifer,
so
you have some more?
I just want to clarify a couple things. With regard to the task force, I'll need your direction. Are you going to list those citizens that are going to be appointed? How many? Do you want me to oversee the task force and manage their schedule? I could use some additional direction so we make sure that we're meeting your expectations. I'm happy to support it and do whatever we can, and I know the park staff will as well. I think we need to be very diligent with the contents of the report that we've received. I welcome the second report. I can't wait for it, to be honest. So, but I don't anticipate too many different conclusions, because they're all going to be evaluating based on the NRA standards, the minimum requirements. That said, we have some conflicts with the existing design of the facility. So beyond the landfill situation, we need to make sure that people that are using the range are safe as well. And a lot of that is going to have to go with education. I did I did fail to mention, and I apologize, I do have the outgoing president of the Carson Rifle and Pistol Club and the incoming president. They've been really wonderful to work with, both of them, and helpful. They both have some great ideas on how we can improve that education piece, almost immediately. Perhaps, an education requirement before you shoot at the facility, so you're aware of what we need to do to control that activity. But there's some conflicts with the lack of side berms on the long range. If you're changing a target on the long range or you're using the short range or the private bait, there's potentially some other safety issues that could happen. We don't want anything to happen on our watch, but we still want to have this facility open and available. So if we do have a limited operation, a Sunday-only operation, if that's what you're going to be directing, we're probably going to have some operational adjustments.
By the way, before
At the
Dan
same
stops
time.
me, that's not on the agenda today.
Right.
On that, I mean, we're talking about a task force today, so. Is that
Right,
Dan?
but,
He's got his finger on the button there, I
okay.
can see that, so that's why I'm.
I get that, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to, but I just want you to be aware that the public needs to be aware that it's going to have to be a tight ship.
Okay. Yeah, go.
One of the other things, and I think we'll give you some specific direction when we get done with the discussion here, but I don't think, or I'll ask Dan if I may, I'm not sure this one is technically subject to the open meeting law, but can we make it subject to, I'd like to have them be public meetings that get televised, because if we're going to, I believe we should limit it to no more than 15 people if we can, but I'd like the public to be able to view it, because I think the interested party group is huge. And so can we, in our own motion or discussion item, make it subject so that it actually gets minutes and recorded?
I'm really glad you asked that question. I actually looked into this issue last night just to be doubly sure of our conclusion. After reviewing those statutory provisions and just based on how I'm anticipating this motion, or I should say the creation of the task force to proceed, it is the conclusion of the DA's office that this would be subject to the open meeting law regardless.
And that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
All right, Supervisor Barrett.
Yeah, I'm piling on here a bit, but I think that Lori's point and Stacy's point about openness and smallness of the task force and moving with alacrity and getting this done as soon as we can after that second report comes in, but actually working towards it, knowing, as you said, Jennifer, that there won't be a lot of difference between the reports. We need to get this done quickly, so you're absolutely right. As I said up here between us, that 2 cents worth was more worth, maybe a dime even, not just a nickel. And yeah, smallness will make it move quickly.
All right. Any other questions? Okay. Public comment on this issue.
Good morning. My name is Chris Carver. I'm the incoming president of the Carson Rifle and Pistol Club. Morning, Mr. Mayor, Board of Supervisors, city staff. The Carson Rifle and Pistol Club looks forward to working with the city and improving the Carson City gun range. Our club has a long and deep history with the range, and we're quite literally the original stakeholders. It was our members that held the survey stakes to lay out the rifle and pistol lanes on the existing range. Over the years, we have invested thousands of hours and dollars into the maintenance, improvement, and operation of the range, and have sponsored hundreds of local and regional matches, bringing in sports tourism, recreational activity, and dollars into the economy of Carson City. Today, we continue these efforts and provide safety officers to the range to enable the public to use our existing facility as safely as possible, and I think that's had a dramatic effect on rounds leaving the range. We have long recognized that improvements are needed in both operations and the physical plant, and look forward to working with other members of the task force in making the city range a safe and available resource for our city in the future. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, your club. Hang on, Supervisor Barrett has a question.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Chris, thanks for taking on that role as the head of this organization. Do you think, and I don't know if I'm off the reservation here because of the open meeting law, but would your organization be interested in raising some funds to match with any other funds that we can secure to make these improvements? Or have you talked about that?
We will, and we have in the past. So we have an educational requirement, first and foremost. That is our interest in making smarter shooters. That's what keeps the rounds from leaving the range. But we have also heavily invested in fundraising activities which have led to physical improvements on the range, to include the bathroom, and not just shoot things that you shoot at.
Thank you.
Okay. Other public comment? I don't see any, so let's, this is how democracy works, folks, and if you think we've all got our minds made up as to what this board should look like, or task force should look like, we don't. So we're going to have a little discussion about that, and we're going to open that discussion up with, who wants to start first? Supervisor Bagwell, you want to go? Sure. And then we'll talk about how it's going to be.
Okay.
Mr. President of the Chapter 388, Tom Spencer, thanks to all your veterans. Welcome home, brother. See you later.
So I would like to put a proposal out to see what we like on this, that it not exceed 15 members, representatives potentially, if they want to. We may contact someone and they say no, but we could have NDOW, a law enforcement agency, a member from the rifle and pistol range. If you don't, I'd like to do a Park and Rec member and maybe another supervisor if Brad is interested. He's been working with the committee with me. Someone from the commercial sector, each one of us nominating somebody to serve. So if you have citizens at large or whatever you'd like on that, but that it not exceed the 15 members. That it, the park and someone from Public Works, if they would like to serve on that. That Park and Recreation is the staff to the task force to be able to make sure we meet all the open meeting law and the agenda requirements, so they'd staff it. That it meet as, if you can, within the next 2 weeks, so again, it's as quickly as possible that we get it going. It reports to both the Board of Supervisors, and then reports would also go to the Park and Rec Commission. Let's see, what are we missing? The purview of the committee is to deal with the report that was received, and that it could handle any recommendations to help the management agreement to deal with any of the education or other requirements that were in the report. Did we catch everything? Did I miss anything?
Reports that are received as well as the one that was received. There's another report coming.
Yeah, we could, both NRA reports.
Yeah,
we might have it in time, but we'll see.
If you don't, right.
If we don't, but it would also obviously include any future report that comes in from the NRA or one of the other groups.
I was just adding yes, because we're going to get another one.
And do you want to address goals?
I think I kind of just said that they would just develop a plan after they've reviewed the reports. I'm going to assume they're going to come up with some good recommendations, and they may give us priority order. Do we want them to discuss?
Well, I'd like to charge them with, coming up with, as Jen said, a plan, a construction plan or a mitigation plan to address the issue, implementation, whatever we want to call it, and then a funding plan, and then to look at the operational components of that as well, yeah. Well, beyond the management agreement, but, the operational side of it, yeah.
I guess we technically call it.
Yeah, actually, I'm just talking about how it is operated. I think I would like them to look at that.
Well, can we talk about that a little bit? Because the use agreement is with the Pistol Club, so you're also recommending then that the operational plan that the Pistol Club gets reviewed by the task force? Not just the use agreement, their actual operating plan?
As long as we're looking at it and we're putting experts together, yes, that would be my desire.
We'll see.
That's worth more than a nickel. That's a good advice. That's good.
Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director, just to update you, Supervisor Bagwell, as well as park staff, and we have met with the club on numerous occasions. Months ago, actually, probably for the 2 years that I've been here, we've discussed how outdated this agreement is. It's over 20 years old. It's not even accurate to what's being reflected out on site. Both the club and the city agree that the agreement needs to be, revisited in its current form. So we did put the club on notice in writing, compliant with the agreement, that we wanted to terminate the existing agreement. It's still valid through April. So obviously, we have time to work out what does that new one look like, how do we want to operate the facility and manage the facility? What resources does the club have available to contribute? They're working through those things as well. So it's definitely a cooperative conversation that's already started, but I think it would be appropriate to have that task force weigh in on that as well.
Then sooner rather than later, because even though it sounds like a long time for April 1st to come around the corner, it's not by the time the use agreement anyway. So I'm fine with adding that into the condition.
Darren, do we have somebody from Public Works that would be able to be on this task force that would, one, understand the operations of the landfill, understand the operations, if maybe they use a rifle range, who understands the dynamics that goes on there, but also can give some ballpark figures about, what construction activities can be done and what they might cost. We have somebody who can do that? All right. I'm okay with what we've got going on here, so.
Did I get it right?
All right. Okay. And I don't know that we've added it up to 15 members, but I think we've got.
Just can't exceed, I said.
We're at 13. So.
That way it gives us a wiggle.
Let's,
We good?
Got a motion?
let's try a motion. Let's see, go motion.
Sure. I move to create a task force for the purpose of reviewing the Carson rifle and pistol range, third parties, plural, potentially, safety assessments, and making recommendations to the Board of Supervisors and other items as discussed today and agreed upon.
Second.
I know there's a motion and a second, and I suspect what Ms. Budge is raising her hand for is.
Did I miss something?
No, she needs some clarification. So I think what she's saying, I read it on her face, maybe I'm wrong. And we usually don't do it, but this is unusual times. Ms. Budge, what's your concern?
I just wanted to clarify, when will it be today, or when will I get the nominations for those citizen members to be able to notify? And then, did you want me to seek out the law enforcement representative? Do you want to do that or appoint that? I just wanted to kind of close the gap on how we're going to fill these spots.
So I would ask the sheriff to get the law enforcement representative. I think all of us, if we want you to do this within 2 weeks, we would give you a name within a week of any citizen or person you want to add. And then what was your other?
Probably quicker.
Well, within the week, so she can start it within 2. Right.
And then the commercial representative.
Define commercial representative, is that
As a
somebody from the
gun-
business community?
Gun club?
Correct.
Right. A gun store. We've got 2 or 3.
Yes, that was the suggestion from the club, which I think was a good one, to seek out some potential private support and private funding. And, groups like the Sportsman Warehouse and the Sporting Goods Store, they have national grant programs. They also have a lot of resources that they might be able to tap into that we typically don't. So.
I guess my question is, who are we going to allow to decide who's the commercial representative?
I'm fine with Jennifer reaching out and seeing if someone will want Stephen fill that role. I'm okay with that. You guys?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
If the citizen I have in mind has an interest in doing this, he'd represent both citizen at large and be a commercial representative, but I don't know if he'll say yes.
Yeah, and that might be really beneficial to kind of keep the group a decent size. So if you do, when you consider your appointments, perhaps they can have a dual role.
And under the motion, this is to our board up here, I'd really like to see both you and Brad, so there's a position for both you guys on this, folks on this task force, right?
Yes,
Agreed.
I said that.
I just want to
Brad
clarify
was-
that, okay? I want to make sure that, I think that's important to do. All right. And we can't, well, so, just forget that. Okay.
You said it was subject to the open meeting law.
Can I get in
Sure,
on
jump in.
I'm not trying to head anybody off at the pass, but do we want all five of us to, if these two are on it, do they need to also have a representative they choose, or does anybody care
I
about
think they
that?
can get a representative they choose and be on it.
Sure,
I mean, I
okay.
think that's Phil's
Yeah, I
job.
just,
That's my-
just
that's my
raising the question, it doesn't matter to me.
This is one of those ones where nobody's trying to stack the deck. I mean, we want divergence of views if we have some, but at the end of the day, I mean, these are difficult things to happen because people have different views about things. But I found that if we lay everything on the table, people come to a reasoned decision, and that's what we're looking for here, okay? All right. Any other questions? Are we ready for the motion?
You did it already. We were on discussion there. We had a
We're on
motion and a
discussion, that's
second.
what, I know, but I should say that
Vote?
we're ready to vote. All right, are we ready for the vote?
Yes.
All right, on the motion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried, okay. Let me add one more thing before we move off this topic. We've now created this task force. Ms. Budge has undergone a substantial amount of berating is probably too soft a word in social media. And people believe, she's trying to do something untoward or something of that nature. I would just ask our community, please understand that she's doing her job to make things safer for both users of the range and public that doesn't use it, use the landfill. And words matter in this type of world. So be careful you have a First Amendment right to put whatever you want, I guess, mostly on social media. But we're not doing her any favors, and we're not doing our community any favors by, for lack of a word, I'll say it, threatening our Parks and Rec director, okay? That's where I'm going to leave it there. That's from me. All right, anything else? All right, don't hear anything. Thank you very much. Thanks to the Gun Club for stepping up. Let's get this done as quick as possible, and my view is let's get the nominations in Monday so that you can get started, and we can figure out where we're going to get the funds to make this all work, and go from there. And thank you, Jennifer, for what you're doing. Okay, thanks. All right. All right, let's take up to the next item. We ready for 25 now? All right. Ms. Hicks, how are you doing?
And I have a disclosure.
Oh, hang on, I got to write it up here, man. So this is, Stacy, just so I can get the item on the agendas, then you can object. I mean, then you can either object or you can just conflict. Okay. This is an item to direct the staff to initiate a due diligence and preparation of a proposed resolution declaring the intent of the city to sell city property located on Brown Street, totaling about 2.78 acres. We'll take this up. Supervisor Giomi has a potential
Just a disclosure.
disclosure.
Thank you. NRS 281A-420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. In my private commitment, I serve as an unpaid board member of Advocates to End Domestic Violence, a private nonprofit organization. Currently, Advocates to End Domestic Violence is the owner of 2 parcels that are near some of the city-owned properties that are being considered on this agenda item for possible future sale. And the organization is also in active negotiations to purchase another parcel that is immediately adjacent to the parcels being considered on this agenda item. However, because I do not have a personal or economic interest in the organization's real property assets, any potential benefit that the organization may realize as a result of this board's actions on this item would be no greater than the general benefit to all owners of property near the land, and also because any beneficial or detrimental effect to Advocates to End Domestic Violence as the result of any action by this board is only speculative at this point. I do not have a disqualifying conflict. I make this disclosure for full transparency, but will be voting on this matter.
Very good. Any other disclosures? All right. Stephanie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the record, Stephanie Hicks, Real Property Manager. So over the last several months, our staff has been working to inventory and identify our land holdings here at the city. And these next 3 items are the first that we intend to bring forward for discussion to the board. Our goal is to ensure that we're retaining properties that are beneficial to the city and are needed for future city use, and those that we have that we're identifying where we don't, we're going to start to move forward the process of disposing of these properties. So the first item before you for the Brown Street properties was actually a series of parcels that were purchased back in 2005 by the Western Nevada Home Consortium, and they were designated for affordable housing at that time. Due to the economic downturn, that project never went forward, and in 2013, the properties were actually dedicated to the city that would have been a beneficiary to that project. Since this time, there has been discussion with Nevada Rural Housing and other proponents for affordable housing as to how this property potentially could be still utilized for that type of development, but unfortunately nothing has come to fruition. What we've learned through participation in our workforce housing meeting and also discussion with some of these potential developers is the property size is just not large enough for it to pencil out for an affordable project. And so at this point, what staff is recommending is for us to move forward to bring these properties forward for disposal. There's a few steps to this process, and so the first one is that we're requesting direction to perform our initial due diligence, and then once we receive information about the appraisal, there's also some opportunities to potentially do a Phase 1 environmental through a grant with NNDA. Then we will come back to the board for a resolution for the intent to sell. And at that time, we will discuss what the minimum price will be, and then our goal is to take it forward for a public auction. There are a couple different ways in NRS that we can do this. There is one that we chose not to use that does set the minimum price at fair market value, and you can't go any lower than that. In this instance, we're proposing to use NRS 244.2815 in order to set that minimum value at a lower than fair market value, just to be able to start off at a competitive bid. And we hope that that will actually help us drive up the cost as well in that process. But we will, that that value we will set here with you at the board once we get the appraisal back. And we can do that because of the NRS allows for that under economic development. So I'm available if you have any questions.
Questions of Ms. Hicks? Anybody? Public want to weigh in on this one? I don't see anybody. Okay, motion's in order.
I move to direct staff to initiate due diligence in preparation of a proposed resolution declaring the intent to sell the city property as described on the record, and to direct staff to perform all preparatory tasks required for compliance with NRS.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying. We do have discussion.
I think she missed public comment.
Did you miss public comment?
Yes.
Okay, come on up, Dee Dee.
I'm Dee Dee Formaster. I'm sure a lot of you know me. I'm with the Rural Center for Independent Living, and do drop in. I'm here today for 2 things. Number 1, this property has been sitting there for a long time, and we're all aware of that. But the extreme need for low-income housing in this community is unbelievable. I know because I'm on the streets looking at the mess that is starting to occur. We're going to end up like Reno if we do not address the needs of the low-income as well as the homeless communities. This property, even though it's only 2.76 acres, could be utilized easily by building a main center that has showers, washers and dryers, and a place to do communal cooking and bathrooms, and it could be used for a tiny house community. Now, I don't know if this has ever been discussed or not, but we would get on top of the fact that if we don't do something soon and immediately, this community could have a horrendous homeless problem. And also, let's be real, I think that we are still a community that is driven by tourism. Without our low-income workers, we will not have what we need for tourism. So this needs to be looked at and addressed now and quickly. So I am against dumping this property. I think it needs to be utilized for a tiny home community. And this could easily be done and also used for training for places like WNC's building program that's up there. The high school. The high school has, I'm sure, a program where they do building. And because after all, that's what we really need desperately in our community right now is builders and contractors. And I'm sure that our community could come together, work together to build this tiny home community. And it would not take much. If you insist on selling this property and dumping it, I propose that the money, seeing as this property was donated to Carson City for low-income housing, I think the money from this proposed sale should go to low-income housing. So, that's my proposal. I hope that you will take it into consideration because something needs to happen soon, very soon. Thank you very much.
It's kind of unusual. I mean, I usually like to have discussion before a motion's made, but given the circumstances today, Supervisor Barrett, go.
Thank you. I'll ask Stephanie, is our witness correct that this was originally donated? As I understood it, that's Grace, but I didn't research it, for low-income housing. And who was it donated by?
Yes, it was donated to us, and I do have it in the staff report. So it was donated to us, all of the federal funds, though. So Lyon County donated it to us.
Yeah.
All of the funds
Thank
that
you.
were originally used for affordable housing were paid back to the federal government.
Thank you. I do remember now, the Lyon County, yeah.
Thank you.
And we couldn't get the job done, is what you said earlier, right?
That's correct. You know, we've had discussions with several developers in the area that have been looking for property for affordable housing, and this property has been one of several that we've offered up for discussion. And what we are being told, you know, obviously the city certainly isn't opposed to it if it could be used for it, but what we're hearing is it just simply isn't large enough to make things pencil out, even with tax credits and other incentives that are available by the state and federal government. It just simply doesn't pencil.
I've heard the words developer in 5 communities tell me it doesn't pencil out. And it doesn't pencil out because they don't want to, in many cases, have it pencil out. So I'll take that all into consideration. Thank you.
I'll just do it on the discussion. We certainly have the ability to market this price at less if indeed a developer wanted to actually run a low-income project. So I really appreciate the comments from the public comment, but recognize that if I listen to what she was trying to say, there's really two options. If the city retained the property, I don't see us wanting to get in the management business of a housing project. Versus we could set the price maybe that would help make something pencil, because maybe we don't take as much money on the property and therefore something might pencil for someone that wants to do a long-range, low-income project. So I'm certainly interested in what she had to say, and I'm sure this board, when we get further down the process, we can have a few discussions on the price and things of that nature to deal with some of the suggestions. And we do have a housing task force that we work on to try and address some of the issues. So just want to, on discussion.
I would say that with this particular property, I started working on this with Nevada Rural Housing right after I got on the board in 2013. So it's been 6 years and Jim Shirk was on that committee too. So for 6 years, we've been trying to make this project work for a low-income housing project and have not been able to make it work, in large part because there's so many parcels that have to be compiled here that it would have entailed using eminent domain, which is, that's a very dirty word here, especially in Nevada. And there's so many rules now that go along with eminent domain, including putting the property to use within 5 years of the time that you acquire it, or you have to sell it back to the original property owner at the price that you acquired it at. It doesn't make sense. You just can't make the project work. So we've given it 6 years trying to make a low-income housing project work here. We haven't been able to do it. The next best avenue for us to travel down is to offer it up for auction at a potentially reduced price, which gives an incentive to a builder who then can come in and build a housing project there. So I intend to vote for this.
Yeah, question, Brad, there's no guarantee that you can require a developer to do low income after it's sold, is there? Is there a way to go about that?
I think that you could, but I don't know that that's in our best interest.
Yeah, you could, but maybe not. I agree with you. And I agree with you. I don't mean to defame all developers. I've heard the words come out of some developers' mouths, and sometimes I believed them, sometimes I didn't. But developers as a group are a great bunch of people and do a lot for our community economic development-wise. I tend to favor what in public comment was the idea of earmarking this for some kind of a use if we sell it, instead of trying to sell it for a low amount and hope that it works out that way, turn around and put the money into something that builds towards housing elsewhere. Because I think Stephanie's correct that it doesn't, and everybody who's worked on it like you, that it doesn't really, it's not big enough, and there's problems, a lot of problems associated with it. Can we talk about doing that, or is that on our agenda? I guess it's not.
It's not.
Is everybody amenable to talking about that later? Because before it gets sold, Well,
I think there's, there are, I mean, on discussion part here, there are thoughts and considerations about trying to develop a day place for homeless people to go and do a number of things that Ms. Formaster mentioned, and that's coming from our folks up. So I think it's working there. Some of what they've asked for, at least, we've all been asked a little bit, I suspect, but, I've been asked to try and see if there's any way we could, find some state property where we could do that during the day. But I think, it's a larger issue than what we're talking about right here. And I'm not, from my own standpoint, until I know more about what's happening or what could happen there, I'm not comfortable putting restrictions on how we use the funds. So I intend to vote.
Oh, I don't want to put them on now, because we can't actually, because it's not my open meeting, but anyway, I'd like to have that conversation. I haven't been involved at the level that Brad has, and so I'm not questioning the idea of voting not to do this or to do this. I'm just saying we need to, Ms. Formaster is correct. It is a huge problem here and across the nation.
Well, I think on the homeless issue, we were talking last week, and I think our folks believe that, the homeless population has increased by about 30% this year. There's a lot of different reasons for that, but I know that our mental health folks, particularly Mallory Center and our MOST team on the sheriff, are doing the best they can, along with our folks at Health and Human Services, to find affordable places for people to live. But it's getting more and more difficult. Dee Dee's absolutely correct. It's just becoming more and more difficult. These are things we have to work through. But I guess on the homeless issue, just as a comment, I don't know that I have an answer. I've been looking at this for a long time. I don't know that I have an answer for it, but I can say that, between our law enforcement folks and our health and human services folks and our other staff members, we know pretty well, actually we know by name, a lot of the homeless people that are here. And so we have a pretty good idea of what's out there. It's not that that's an answer to it. And also, as this board knows, I raised this issue, and not just because of me, but we raised this issue at the League of Cities about what we're doing on homeless on a regional basis, because we were getting people, coming to because we have treatment facilities here, coming here, going to treatment, and then walking out the door, and they have no place to go. And those things are being addressed, and we've also addressed the issue of potential homeless folks being aggressive to other folks. And I believe that our sheriff and our law enforcement folks have done a good job on that. And so it's a long way of saying, it's a complex issue. I think there isn't a soul up here who doesn't understand that it's an issue for a lot of different reasons. And so that's just my 2 cents. Are we ready to take the vote? You ready? Or you want to? Okay. On the motion then, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We have other folks in the audience for this one. Okay. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, for the record, Stephanie Hicks, Real Property Manager. This one actually segues exactly into what Ms. Formaster was discussing with us, and I do appreciate her comments. We're asking for possible action to direct staff to initiate due diligence to determine whether to convey a portion of 3410 Butteye Way under the provisions of NRS 244.287 for the development of affordable housing, and prepare a proposed request for proposals to be reviewed by the board in order to seek proposals from qualified developers through a competitive process. So the city acquired over 127 acres of property along Butteye Way from the state back in the 60s. And since that time, the property's been developed for numerous different city facilities, including Public Works, the Parks Department, the Nevada Humane Society, and also our Water Resource Reclamation Facility. The portion of the property that is being considered is on the north side of Butteye Way, and that parcel itself totals approximately 7.95 acres. Staff is requesting that about 1.5 acres of that property be preserved for a potential future site for a fire department or emergency operations center, but that would leave approximately 6.45 acres for another use. And this is an area where, in those discussions with the developers and other nonprofits we've talked to, has a potential for an affordable housing development. And so at this point, we would like to again, prepare the due diligence and bring it back to the board. And the process on this one being a little different would be, we would actually prepare also for the board's review a request for proposals that we can publish out and ask for those developers and nonprofits to submit to us for consideration.
anticipated me. I'm glad to hear this, but there is going back to the last item, there is a difference between affordable housing and housing for people who need transitional or who are homeless. I was aware this was on the agenda. I commend you for doing all that and for everyone here who's working on this. But affordable in this town is still outside the reach of a lot of those people we were talking about before. Thank you.
Supervisor Gioli.
Stephanie, if I'm not mistaken, 244-287 is the part of NRS that allows a local government to donate land or a building, in this case land, at zero cost as long as it's for a public purpose, correct? And that's the component that you're going for here?
Right, that's part of our consideration with it. When we bring everything back to the board, that will be the intent to resolution. We'll have to determine if that's the direction that we intend to go.
Okay, thank you.
And I think part of the RFP process, John, can address from the proposals what definition we want to place on affordable projects. So I know in the Housing Task Force that we've been working on deciding, do we want to allow that for people at 80%? There's all these great federal programs and rules on they're under 60% of what's affordable. So we can deal with those issues within the RFP process that you were talking about on the last item. So we can set what we're willing to accept and condition as affordable.
Well, that's good to hear, but affordable still is a cut above what we were just talking about. So I agree with you that we can do that, but it still won't be affordable to a lot of people. Housing costs are just high here and always have been.
Well, I think you're going to hear from some people who might be able to deal with that in a more cost-effective way than what we normally see. But, all right, public testimony? Come on, Dee Dee, go ahead. That's all right.
I'm Dee Dee Formaster. I'm with RCIL and Dewdrop Inn. I do want you to know, Mayor, that our program is a day drop-in center. And I also want you to know that I believe in housing first. Transitional housing does not work. It has not worked in years. And if you look at the statistics, it'll tell you housing first works, transitional housing does not work. So, we need low-income housing, but we also need housing that has to do with being able to use vouchers for rural housing. Okay, so I realize that the standard of living is very much higher here than a lot of our low-income workers can afford. So I want to make sure, and I'll be following this project, to make sure that this is not going to be an income-based program where you have to make so much to be able to get into it. I don't want a housing project like that, because that is not going to solve our problems. I want a housing project that allows low-income housing and people who are on Social Security and disability to be able to utilize this housing as well as our low-income people. Because yes, we have a major housing crisis in this town. There's about 0.5% of vacancy rates in apartments and housing here in Carson City. And it's getting desperate. I mean, to the point that I have people in their 60s and 70s who are on the streets. And families, for God's sakes, of low-income housing areas. So they desperately need low-income housing. And let's not stop just with this one project, which I am extremely in favor of. Let's get it moving. But while we're doing this project, we need to be looking quickly at another project, because this is not going to provide the housing units that we need. This is just scratching the surface. We need to be moving along quickly in developing one after another projects. So, and we need to do it fast. Otherwise, it's going to get out of control. And I'm seeing it. And I want you to know that I see it every day when I go to open my drop-in center. I see it every day. And these people are people who have lived here their entire lives in Carson City. These are not transient people. For instance, the lady I'm placing in housing right now today is 62 years old, and she has been here since 1968. She was on the streets. That shouldn't be happening. And she could freeze to death out there. And I realize that Carson City is working very diligently on providing services. Thank God the churches came together and we have a night project, but I'm extremely concerned that housing is not moving along quick enough to be able to stop people from freezing to death. We've already lost 3 people this year, which I'm sure you're aware of. So these projects need to be moving quickly, and this project is a good project. So let's see if we can get another one in the works while we're working on this one.
Okay, Dee Dee.
Thank you very much for your hard work.
All right, Dee Dee.
Thank you for your hard work.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, honorable board members. I'm Ed Schnabel. I'm a resident of Carson City and president of Carson City Veterans Village. We're a nonprofit 501c3 organization for veterans. Our goal is to build a veteran community in Carson City of transitional tiny homes with on-site services, which will set up the veterans for stable housing and training, which will lead them to a more successful permanent housing solution and employment. There will also be a community center for training, for counseling, for meetings. And at last count, there were 69 homeless veterans in Carson City. We urge the board to adopt the staff's proposal on the RFP and move forward with it.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks to the veterans community and your group. Just thank you. It's good. All right. Any other public comment?
So could I just
Yeah, go. Hang on a second.
I just want to clarify. So you're suggesting a transitional instead of something more like Richard's Crossing?
Yes, ma'am.
And why? Just
it is-
if I can ask, why not permanent housing?
Because we want to get the veterans educated and trained and get them on their feet and become members of society, successful members of society. For veterans, transitional housing is working in Kansas City, and it's working very effectively, and I see no reason that it would not work here.
So you're saying you have a model that you want to replicate?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for what you do. You were here for the last agenda item, and I know we're past that, but I'm curious to know that if that 2.79 acres would be of value to you in your capacity as with the projects or similar to this, or do you need more land?
We really like the Butteye Way property, sir.
So could you make something work on the other property, or you don't think you could?
I'm not, because I don't know where it's located exactly.
Okay.
And because location has a lot to do with it, because of the surrounding areas and what may or may not be there that would not be good or
compatible. From a compatible perspective.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Just curious.
Okay, any other public comments? Come on up. For those of you who don't know, that Ed's wife, Jenny, writes the poems in the newspaper.
Hi, I'm Natalie Steering. I'm the site director for Veterans Resource Center here in
Hi,
Carson
Natalie.
City.
Good to see you.
Good morning, or good afternoon, rather. We also serve all of rural Nevada. I'm here as a hopeful, evolving community partner for this project and speaking on behalf of the Housing First approach. As Ms. Formaster brought up, I'd like to comment on that and the ways in which our program, although Housing First, works effectively with transitional housing candidates. So my understanding of this proposed project is that working with veterans and readjusting to civilian life, providing employment services and counseling that will help in that transition. So even as a Housing First project, Veterans Resource Center provides a behavioral health center in Reno for veterans that are of higher acuity and need immediate stabilization prior to or as we're looking for stable and permanent housing. I think that we would be a wonderful both cooperative and complementary community partner to this organization. And I think that even though transitional housing sometimes perks ears as perhaps not a permanent solution, I would urge that members of the board and the city not think of this as merely transitional and not leading to permanent housing. We have wonderful community partners in this area that would complement this project. And I really am very interested, my ears perk up in knowing that we could provide services to a specific population in need in this community and surrounding areas. We work with victims of domestic violence as a target population, at-risk youths, but let's introduce something for our veteran population here. These Veteran Village projects are also very effective in Las Vegas, and as it was introduced in Kansas as well. So I'm just here to support and to point out that transitional housing certainly can lead to permanent and stable housing, and the projects can be very complementary. That's all.
Questions of
Thank you.
Natalie?
Oh, excuse
Natalie,
me.
thank you very much for, the Veterans Resource Center is a wonderful resource for us in Carson City. So thank you for what you're doing. I'm always amazed when I listen to you talk about all the things that you do and the things, well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Anybody? All right. Motion's in order.
I move to direct staff to initiate due diligence to determine whether to convey the city property as described on the record for development of affordable housing and to prepare a proposed request for proposals to be reviewed by the board.
Second.
There's a motion and a bunch of seconds. On the motion, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay, carried. Thanks to you veterans out there. Ed, thanks. Okay. See you later. Natalie, go do good work.
Yeah, that's always my effort, and happy to work with veterans as a specific population. Thank you all for your service. I'm not a veteran, but thank God there are. You're willing to make a sacrifice, and I hardly want to sleep outside in the cold. Can't do so. Yeah.
Very good. Well said, Natalie. Okay. And Dee Dee, thank you. All right. And I know what Dewdrop Inn does. Don't worry. I know. I got you.
We work
card every single day.
I know. All right. All right, let's take up another one, 25 Charlie. This is on another due diligence one on Medical Parkway, 1.6 acres. Okay, go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the record, Stephanie Hicks. In 2002 and 2003, Carson City purchased 2 larger parcels for the construction of a regional detention facility. Following that, the dedication of right-of-way for Medical Parkway occurred, and so there was a bisection of these properties, which resulted in the 1.6 acres that we're discussing today. When the detention basin was constructed, it was determined that this additional acreage was not necessary for that, and with the road also bisecting it, that deterred the use of it. And it's located on the east side of Medical Parkway. At this point, it again has been part of the properties we've been reviewing and determining whether or not there is a city need. At this point, we don't have a public purpose use for these parcels, and so we're bringing them forward to discuss disposal of them as surplus property. We would be looking at the same process as we discussed for the Brown Street properties, in which we would do our due diligence, have appraisals completed, and then bring it back to the board for discussion of selling it at a less than fair market value for economic development purposes.
Questions of the board? Public comment? Go.
So while we can bring this one back at a less than market, we could set it at market at that time. So today's action doesn't mean that we're going to allow this one to be sold for less than market. I happen to think this one's a pretty good commercial piece of property, so I just want to, on the record, it's an option that we could consider, but we'll have that decision later.
That's correct.
Okay.
When we bring forward the resolution of intent, that's when the determination will be made. I just wanted to make one more comment. In previous discussions and discussions with staff, there's a lot of belief that there was stormwater funding in some capacity that may have been used to reimburse the general fund or as part of the purchase of these properties. That's something else we're going to look into, because if we can connect those dots and verify that that's how things occurred, we'd like the funding to go back to the stormwater fund so that it can be used for future stormwater projects.
So, as far as setting value at market value or less than market value, I would caution us, and we'll discuss it when this comes back to us, if you set market price on an auction basis if you set it at market price for the opening bid, there's a good chance you're going to get no bids, because anybody that purchases it knows that they have to pay above market value. So if you're lucky enough and there's only one bid, that's at market value. Anybody who purchases it then has to bid above that. So in my experience, we are better off setting the value at below market and letting there be a competitive bidding process that would then increase the price and hopefully get to or above market value. But if you set the opening bid at market value, I don't think it'll sell.
That's not what I'm really suggesting. I'm just saying it's not going to be a freebie. It's not going to be a 50%er. We can set it at a 90% or something. I was just recommending, I'm not seeing this as the economic development like the last project that we might actually donate the property into, that's all. Okay.
Anybody else? Good comments, good board. Anything, Stephanie? All right, board, we ready for a motion on this one? Go.
I move to direct staff to initiate due diligence in preparation of a proposed resolution declaring the intent to sell the city property as described on the record, and to direct staff to perform all preparatory tasks required for compliance with NRS.
Second. There's a motion, I think there is, and a second. On the motion, all discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Thank you very much. Well done. Thank you. All right, let's take up some appointment issues. Item 26, Alpha. You want a break? Anybody want a break real quick?
Nope, let's let him go.
All right.
Poor guy's been here all day.
Well, sort of all day. All right, come on up. This is 26 Alpha. This is to approve the appointment by me of Jay Wiggins to the Planning Commission for a 4-year term ending December 31st, 2022. This is under the new rules we've got for appointments to the Planning Commission. Good morning, Jay. How are you?
I'm good, thank
All
you.
right. Want to say anything about why you want to get in here? Lori?
Well, I've been a resident for over 20 years, and I thought I should get involved with the community a little bit more, and this seems to be a great opportunity.
I think you should brag a little bit on your background.
Well, I have my degree in engineering. I also have my master's degree. I currently deal with regulations, but not really related to the community. I think this community is great. I work in Reno, so I understand how Reno operates a little, and I certainly would like Carson to avoid some of those things. I plan to stay in Carson City despite working in Reno. My wife works for NDOT here, and my 2 kids go to Carson High. So I think this is just a great opportunity, and I can help the community.
All right. I don't see any public comment. Anybody want to weigh in? I don't see any. We'll take a motion. Want to make a motion? Lori, go.
I move to approve the appointment by the mayor of Jay Wiggins to the Planning Commission for a 4-year term ending December 31st, 2022.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye. Welcome, and thanks, Jay.
Thank you for your service, Jay.
Thank you to the board and the mayor.
All right. All right, let's take up 26 Bravo. This is a possible nomination of Kevin Hill to the TRPA Planning Agency, not the TRPA itself. Mr. Eswine, who has been there for 2 years, does not want another term. Any public comment, any board comments, public comments on this one? Board, this was recommended by, I think, our existing representative on the TRPA suggests this. We all know Kevin, so want to make a motion?
Yeah, I move to submit the nomination of Kevin Hill to the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency for appointment to serve as Carson City's lay member on the Advisory Planning Commission.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing and seeing none. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay, let's take up 26C. This is a bunch of ones we do annually here for various positions. And as I've mentioned before, I'll take whatever the board wants me to do. I will just mention one thing, that last night I was asked to be now the chair of League of Cities. So I'm not certain if I want to be appointed again to that or not, but
I already had your name there.
so
I already had your name there.
we'll see. All right. So on the first one, I'm not certain if this is a law or not, but my recommendation for Mayor Pro Tem would be Supervisor Bagwell.
With all due deference to Supervisor Bagwell, I think she'd be fine, but I believe this is, as was the case when Supervisor Abowd is here, something that should go to the senior member who isn't the mayor, so I will nominate Brad Bunkowski. Then we can have a
Discussion.
Anybody want to discuss this? All right.
Yeah.
Go.
It's interesting. I appreciate the nomination, John. I guess it comes down to I'll do the job if you guys vote me in, but I don't really care. Yeah.
Well, I'm just going by a belief, as we were honoring people out here who've worked for us for 20 years, 10 years. I believe in seniority. I'm not a union guy, but I believe in seniority. But it's up to whatever.
Well, my sense is we can move this around. We've got, at least while I'm mayor, we've got a couple of years to deal with this. So, but whatever you want, what do you want to do? So,
Can I make a comment?
Comments or orders? For sure.
Well, I would like to do it, and if Brad really has no desire or burning desire to do it, I would like to do it.
So I could withdraw the nomination. I don't think anybody seconded me anyway.
No.
So I'm not married to the idea. I just believe in seniority. So it's no reflection on you.
I do too.
And I think from Robert's Rules of Order, you don't need a second on an appointment.
Oh, okay.
We'll look it up, but I'm pretty sure
Learn something new every day.
You don't need it. So, I mean, we always do it around here because we always get, but I think in strict interest.
I'll withdraw the nomination.
All right. The motion to, Supervisor Barrett's motion has been withdrawn. All in favor of appointing Lori
We need
Bagwell?
a term.
Supervisor-
We
Pardon
need
me?
to determine the term.
Is it 1 year? I think
1 year?
1 year. Let's do 1 year. All in favor of appointing Supervisor Bagwell as the mayor pro tem for 1 year, ending the end of this year, 12/31/19.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay. Did I get that on here? All right. All right, let's take up the CTA. I got to figure out what I've got going on here.
Are you ready for
Yeah,
the
ready.
nomination? I nominate Stacy Giomi to the Culture and Tourism Authority for a 4-year term ending 12/31/22.
I will supply the second we don't need.
Okay, all right. Anybody, any further discussion? All in favor of appointing Supervisor Giomi to the Carson City Cultural and Tourism Authority? We make these names longer and longer as they go along. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay, Stacy, you're on. To the Water Sub-Conservancy District, who's on that now? Brad, you're on there.
Right, I'm the treasurer this year.
Okay,
So I would nominate Stacy for that position as well.
all right. Anybody else? All in favor of appointing both, is it for you or just Stacy?
Just
You're the
Stacy.
Just Stacy.
His is a
Just
different
Stacy,
term.
right. Okay. All in favor of appointing Supervisor Giomi to the CTA, or the Sub-Conservancy District, excuse me, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Thank you, Stacy. Okay, to the Carson,
Little piling on, huh?
You're almost-
really.
Join the club.
Not from my perspective.
okay, to the Carson City Regional Transportation Commission and the Carson City Metropolitan Planning Organization.
Well, I'm the current chair, so I should probably stay on it.
Stay on it.
And I think Lori wants to stay on it, so I
All
would.
right. All in favor of keeping Supervisor Bunkowski and Supervisor Bagwell on the RTC, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay. You following me right here? Am I going too fast for you? All right. All right. Audit Committee. I think Lori's on this from our board here. Anybody else want to be on that committee? All in favor of appointing Supervisor Bagwell to the Carson City Audit Committee? Not certain how long that is, but how long is that? Another year?
Let's go through the end.
Another year. Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay, let's take up Carson City Debt Management Commission.
You stay on that, John?
Yeah, I'd like to stay on that.
All in favor of appointing Supervisor Barrett to the Carson City Debt Management Commission, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay, NACO, I'm on this one.
Do you want to stay?
I'll stay. I'll stay both of them if they want. All in favor of leaving me on the NACO board?
Aye.
Okay. Nevada Works, do we want to do Nevada Works?
We need the alternate for NACO.
I'll stay as
Oh,
the alternate if you want.
Okay, alternate for NACO, right. Supervisor Bagwell, all in favor of having Lori serve as the alternate to on the NACO board? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay, we got that one. Nevada Works, or Western Nevada, the Legislative Coalition, that's the 4 counties that get together. I think Brad and I are on that right now. Anybody want to change that? Anybody? All right. All in favor of appointing myself and to Supervisor Bunkowski to the Western Nevada Legislative Coalition, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Nevada Works?
No, the alternate. I'll stay as the alternate.
Oh,
if
just
you
stay
want.
as the alternate, I'm sorry. Thank you. Nevada Works?
We need to vote on Lori as the alternate.
Oh, wait a minute, you didn't, yeah, right. Okay, let's go back, I'm sorry, going too fast here. On the alternate designee to the Western Nevada Legislative Commission would be Supervisor Bagwell. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Thanks, Brad, for bringing that up. Now we'll do Nevada Works. I'm moving. Okay. Who's on Nevada Works right now? John?
Was Karen.
Karen? Mr.
I'll do it if you need to. If
Mr.
no one
Gilmy?
else will do it.
Huh?
'Cause it fits
I
with-
don't know what it is, so probably don't want to put me on it.
Well, I think it'd be interesting if you want to go on it to see what's out there on Nevada Works. I mean, but whoever wants to do it. I mean,
If no one else is going to take it, I'll do it.
all right, Supervisor Bagwell.
It's
All
a
right,
good
John, you
committee.
got anything you
It's a
want to do it, John? All right, all right. All in favor of appointing, term is,
Well,
how many years is that?
we get to decide.
7.
7. I withdraw my acceptance. Want to just do it the 2 years?
2 years.
2 cents worth.
Okay.
All right, 2 years. All in favor
All
of
right.
appointing Supervisor Bagwell to Nevada Works for a term of 2 years, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay. Moving right along to the TRPA. We have an excellent person on there now, former Supervisor Shelley Aldine. Anybody want to change that? And all in favor of reappointing Shelley Aldine to the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Determine the term on that one.
What the
too.
term is
It's whatever we make it.
2 years.
2 years. Let's do 2 years. Is that all right with everybody? All right, sorry to move along, but these things are,
I didn't ask Shelley about that. I asked her.
well, we'll make her
Yeah,
take it.
She can,
I mean,
too.
That's how these things get along, and it's a sign of a good board that people are willing to move these things around. So, all in favor of reappointing former Supervisor Aldine to the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency for a period of 2 years, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay. Have to do anything more on that one?
I think that covers all of them.
All right.
You filled in all the blanks?
I wondered where Nancy went. Nancy, the city manager's over there. Okay, John.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we attempted to have a meeting about Western Nevada Development District. I'm on that board and on an NDA board, and I will continue because it's not up today, but for several reasons, we're going to have another meeting with the director of that. I'm concerned about it, that we have representation on there, but I don't know that we've ever gotten anything out of being represented over the last 20 years or so. I think our city manager said we were involved with it back in the day, because she's been here 20 years, so she knows these things. But by the same token, because my wife is on GoEd, I was in an uncomfortable set of circumstances, but I will continue with it. One of the things is I don't know that we're getting reimbursed for going to these things. There are a lot of items that are out at the city and don't get, and I'm not cheap. This is just public service to me. I'm not complaining about it, but I just want to make sure we're going to get something, and I want to have a meeting with them because the opportunity zone that we have in this community could prove to be important, and I understand that may help if we're involved and still have our SEDS. So we'll meet with the director, and I'll continue on both NNDA and WNDD, at least for a time. The dues aren't up until the middle of the year, so we'll see then what we want to do.
Good. Brad, go.
I'm glad you brought up opportunity zones, John, because we, as the board and the city, may want to put a task force together for that as well to determine if we have shovel-ready projects for that, because you have to invest in those assets by the end of 2019 to get the full benefit of the step-up in basis, not even the 10 years, for the 7-year. So that's something that we should bring back sooner rather than later.
Well, the reason I brought it up is I heard by the grapevine that it helps if we're involved with WNDD and have a SEDS plan, and we do at this juncture. But I want to be sure of that because it could be very important to do that for the community. That's an interesting plot of vacant land out there. So we'll just keep doing our due diligence. So thanks.
You know, in the scheme of, on the topic of what a small world it is, I have a very good longtime friend who works with the federal government who's involved in drafting these regulations. Won't tell me anything about it.
A lifetime friend, as I understand it.
Lifetime friend, yeah. Yeah. Not that one, but another one.
Oh, okay.
This is one, not that one. Okay. Let's take up the city manager's report.
All right, I'm going to try to be speedy like you.
Well, I apologize to the board and the public. I'm trying to move along, and sometimes I get a little ahead of myself until Supervisor Bunkowski gives me either the foot or the evil eye, the eagle, whatever that is, the stink eye. He gives it to me, and I find my place in the world.
I think I've seen that stink eye before.
All right.
Just kidding. So we have a lot of upcoming events. On January 22nd, the Carson Aquatic Facility is going to reopen to the public. And on January 24th, we have the board retreat at the Adams Hub. on January 26th, there's going to be a reopening event at the aquatic facility, and the admission will be free for the public all day on that date. January 30th is the mayor's State of the City address, not address, but address, at the Gold Dust West from 11:30 to 1. And then on February 12th, we'll have the Community Center Theater Grand Reopening Gala, and that's from 6:30 to 8:30. And both for the mayor's event and then the theater reopening, the tickets are available through the Chamber of Commerce.
That's good. Question there, Nancy. Do you know if the mayor's address is going to be videoed and posted for those that, can't purchase tickets through the chamber, but they want to, or is, you got notes that'll be posted somewhere or something?
I know we did that last year with Rachel Snyder, but let me check on that. I'm not sure if we have.
Yeah, I would just like
We
the
did,
public
yeah.
to have access to it.
Oh, yes, I got confirmation from the the man behind the door.
It's nice to know he's listening to us in that room. Okay.
All right, so good news from the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Department. They've been awarded 2 grants through their nonprofit partner, the National Off-Highway Vehicle Conservation Council, and one grant, $100,000 grant is from the Recreational Trails Program, and another $100,000 is from the Nevada Off-Highway Vehicle Commission. This is Phase 2 out of a 3-phase project, and this phase includes on-site detailed trail assessment, design, some improvements, signage and boundary fences, and education and outreach. The next phase, they're doing an application in the fall of this year, and that they'll request funding for a trailhead construction and improvements, like a toilet and a kiosk out there. So these pictures are, the grant focuses on the south end motorized area of Prison Hill, and that's what these 2 photos are from. So under community development, we have the entire calendar year figures in now. And the permit valuation for December was $12.7 million for a year-to-date total of $102.8 million. $63 million for residential, $9 million in new commercial and industrial, and $30 million in commercial and industrial remodel and miscellaneous. The total for calendar year 2017 was $69 million.
If you want to see what the Great Recession did to us, look at the years 2009 through 2014.
Yep.
All right. All right. Sorry, Nancy. City Manager, go ahead.
All right, so this is the building permit activity report. There's a big jump in the permit activity due to Carson Hills. This is the project behind the Galaxy Theater. They pulled their remaining 310 building permits in December. So they have pulled a total of 370 permits for 2018. And in addition to those 310 permits, there was also 11 single-family detached permits. And that's a total of 567 permits issued for the calendar year. And last year was 140.
Where is that in comparison to the allocation? What was the allocation for 18? So we were within 100, give or take, of the allocation.
Yeah, 658. Yeah. So the next 3 items actually went to the Planning Commission and were approved last night. And let's see, this is was under zoning review. This is Lampa Ranch East, and this is a tentative planned unit development to create 137 single-family lots and 312 multifamily units on 41.6 acres. This is the Carson Tahoe Regional Medical Center. They requested a special use permit to expand the existing facilities. This includes expansion of the emergency services area, medical center support services, and the Sierra Surgery Hospital, as well as they're they want to construct an enclosed pedestrian walkway connecting the main hospital and the Sierra Surgery Hospital. This was a request for a right-of-way abandonment for a 1-foot strip of property on Fifth Street, fronting what will be now known as the Bank Saloon building, previously the Jack's Bar. This is where the existing building encroaches into the city's right-of-way. So the next three are going to the Planning Commission on January 30th, and that will be held in the Bonanza Room because they'll be doing the refresh in this this room. So this is a request for a setback variance for Silver Oak Phases 23A and 23B, and also planning is in discussions with the developer to amend the plan unit development to establish revised setbacks for all the remaining phases so that they don't have to continue going through the variance process. This is a request for a special use permit for the Sierra Skies RV Resort to allow an extended stay. This is up to 180 days RV park with up to 277 RV spaces, and this property is zoned tourist commercial. This is a request for a special use permit to allow a new 70-foot tall cell tower on property zoned retail commercial on South Carson Street. And a building permit is currently under review for a new Jackson's Food Store. This is the Chevron site that's on the corner of William and Carson Street that's currently closed and boarded up. They will be replacing the existing building.
Hopefully they'll be replacing some of the existing landscaping there.
Yeah.
I know because there's an issue about who owns what in that front of that building, whether it's the private property or I think the city's got a little piece of that little corner in the front. And in the back and on the side there, that piece of property we want to take a look at all of our properties, but all development. But, that's a piece of property that people see a lot, particularly when you're coming into town. And I know the board is concerned about our entrances to the city looking beautiful and inviting. Keep that in mind as we go through the development on this and let Jackson know that, that's a big issue for us here, okay?
And just for the public's edification, if anyone's listening, could you tell us a little bit about Jackson, Lee, or Nancy? Or do you?
It's like the one on Fifth Street.
Yeah.
I believe it's the same as, it's on Fifth Street and Solomon, so it's the same
Yeah,
concept.
I know where you mean, but tell us more about it if you can. I know where you mean. I've never been in there.
Lee Plemmel, Community Development. It's a convenience store, so like on Fifth Street in Solomon, it's a convenience store, and they plan on keeping the gas stations, but they're tearing down the building and putting a new one in place, so they'll have to do all new landscaping with it, and with it being submitted, and it's downtown. We've made them, I know Hope in our department, as they've gone through the department, made them very aware that needed to look better than that existing building does.
Right, and that's the reason I was asking, because of the location.
Yeah.
I'll treat you to a cup of coffee there, John.
And Lee, before you leave, am I wrong, but I think there is a little part of that little, right now landscaped out in front on the corner, on the southeast corner there, that, because I remember we talked about having the landowner clean up that landscape right there, and I think it came back that, we owned a piece of that as well. I don't know if that's the case or not, but if it is, we don't have any business owning just a few feet of a planter out there.
Well, right, it's not untypical actually that businesses, there's a little bit of city right-of-way that is between their property line and the sidewalk, but for commercial properties, we require them to landscape that to the back of the sidewalk. So I think, engineering will look at if there's any need for abandonment of right-of-way, but we'll whether or not it's in the city right-of-way, they're going to take care of new landscaping for those areas and maintenance of it. And we have had, in the past, code enforcement for weeds and in that landscaping there. So, yeah, we've had to take enforcement action in the past, and they've cleaned it up, but it'll be nice to have some new landscaping there.
And when do you think that'll happen? I mean, I say that because every time I stop at that stoplight and I'm looking west, I look at that boarded up piece of property and my stomach turns. So
Yeah, they've indicated that they've been on this and wanting to move on it. In the development industry, that can be weeks or months. But I think that they're in for permit now because they want to move forward and build the new building there.
Good for them. All right, Supervisor Barrett.
Yes, just because you talked about encroachment, it brings up something else. I don't think it's outside the realm of, where are we on the pergola outside on McFadden Plaza in that process? I haven't heard anything, and I know we had a December court date, I think.
So as far as I know, and this is a matter that's being taken up by one of our DDAs in our office, settlement negotiations were pending a couple of weeks ago. Those sort of fell through. At this time, what I'm aware of is that there's a scheduling conference scheduled for, I believe that either took place already this week or it will shortly be upcoming, either late this week or early next week. And I believe after that, this matter will be probably set for bench trial, unless settlement negotiations resume and the parties come to some sort of a compromise.
Thank you. Keep us updated, would you?
I think there was a motion to dismiss that was denied.
That's correct, yes.
Denied actually sort of on the day of or before when we had the original swearing in, so, okay.
All right, so we have a building permit under review for the new Nissan dealership on South Carson and a site improvement.
Where have they been?
I know. I don't remember what their timeline was, but I think they were planning
They've
on
been working through the
opening
entitlement process. It's been
Okay.
designed mostly.
Yeah.
It just takes a while, like 1 to 2 years is not unusual.
No, I, you've cautioned me about that, Brad, a lot, and I agree with you. I'm just, sometimes when you'd like to say, okay, well, you're moving along or you're not moving along, and that's fine. But I understand what Supervisor Bonkowski's saying. He's absolutely right, so.
Yeah,
okay.
the last I had heard was they had hoped to open in October of 19. I'm not sure if that's on schedule or.
Okay.
All right, so this permit is for the building. And the final building permit under review is for a 62-unit apartment complex on Hot Springs Road. The next few slides are the IFC activity from November 7th through January 2nd. And most of these items were the approval to fill vacant positions. There was 18 in all. Some of these are like when Dan moves, when he moved up to assistant DA, then, it's a domino effect and you have to hire all the other positions. So there are currently 5 job postings that are still open, and then the others are all in the process, various process. Okay, and the next item, we approved a potential augmentation to the court's budget in the amount of $2,135. This is just a just-in-case approval for an augmentation. This is to aid hearing impaired attorneys as well as court patrons. And in the insurance fund, we approved the payment of up to $5,000 for the third-party professional that did the range safety assessment for the rifle and pistol range. And then additional funding was approved for the replacement of 3 bridges at Mills Park due to safety concerns. That ended up, I think, just timing of the project was an additional $9,206 for a total for the project of $36,200. So the current undesignated balance in the capital projects fund is $304,499. I think that's a little lower than what Sherry had earlier, but I think it was the timing. It was when she did the carryover, and now there's been a couple of other things approved. So I brought back our Carson City Connect, the survey results, and this is for May 8th through December 31st. 159 surveys were filled out, and the response rate was 41%. In employee effectiveness, 67% ranked the city as superior, and 16% were good. 5% each for average, below average, and poor. The time to respond, 71% ranked us as superior and 20% good, with 6 responses of poor. On employee courtesy, 74% was superior and 13% was good. And we had 4 ratings of poor. When I last reported this, we had a 0 in the poor category. Under expectations met, 81% of the time we either met or exceeded the public's expectations, with 19% below. So overall, they're still pretty impressive ratings for the city. They did decline a little bit from the last time I reported. We are going to be doing a review and update of the Carson Connect program. This will be done as part of the Tyler ERP implementation, and so this, once that goes live, this will be fully integrated in with other Tyler modules. So this would also be a great time for training, in the various departments to maybe improve some of these scores. And, we have many new employees since we first implemented this, so it's probably time for some updated training. And then the last slide, Lee actually sent this over to me. This is just strictly the results for code enforcement. And overall, these are great ratings, I think, for a code enforcement department. So most of the ratings are either superior or in the good range. And that's all I had.
Question. Nancy, just on the Carson City Connect, some of the people I've spoken to are still not aware of it, and I know you can't do everything to make people aware of it, but maybe as you do a refresh on it, like a story on it or some social media work on it might be helpful to let people know what it's about and what it's for, and because I direct people to it quite frequently, and they go, well, I didn't even know that existed, and so I just think it might be helpful to do that.
In relationship to what you said earlier about 5 openings that you haven't been filled, is it getting tougher because the unemployment is down? Can you check with Melanie and just give me a verbal report back? I mean, I would assume it's getting tougher to find the people you want for the spots that you have.
Right, and it's getting tougher to, keep the people that we currently have, so.
That too.
Yeah.
Anything else? All right. Oh, it's about done. All right, let's go to item 27, non-action items, board members.
Oh, yeah.
Go.
So I would just like some further discussion or information for the public. I'm getting a lot of questions on the waste management contract. I'm sure some of the rest of you are too. I think there's still some misinformation out there. So one being that they think it's mandatory for the size of the cans are all going to be the 95, 96 gallon cans, and they don't think they can get a smaller recycle one. So anything we can do to help put the message out there, they can accept smaller cans if they want. And then the other discussion item on it is I'd like staff and waste management to really consider not delivering things that people don't want. The plan was they'll just blanket the city with the 3 new cans. Well, there are people that absolutely do not have room for 3 cans, and so it's I'm just saying, please explore that to let people opt out to the smaller size right away, and maybe there's a plan that can be put together so that rolls out as smooth as possible. Thank you.
Any other board items?
Comments?
Comments.
Are we at the comment stage?
Yeah, go.
Okay, I just wanted to say to everyone that, first of all, sometimes my sense of humor comes back to bite me, and the reporter came up and said, well, who are you talking about Republican vice, et cetera, and I said it was just a joke. So I apologize if I make a joke that reflects badly on us. Secondarily, one of the reasons I was hot on the homeless is my wife Jean and I met when I was on a board in another community where we hired her to run a place a little bit like the Dewdrop Inn, called the Gathering Place there, and it's been a concern of mine for a long time, and I want to commend everybody on this board who is working on this problem, but I know it's like trying to run into a brick wall with your head, so I apologize if anybody thought I was being denigrating about what's been done. It's just very hard to do, and I particularly want to say to any developers out there, I wasn't getting on you in mass. I just have heard it doesn't pencil out a lot of times.
Brad.
Well, I can tell you, John, because I look at projects every single day, maybe 1 out of 100 pencils right now. So if you're hearing these projects don't pencil, it's because it's the truth.
Well, I don't doubt it's true.
And to give you a real-world example, there's a project that is done in a fourplex format. So if you sold a fourplex, say for $500,000, which would be market price for a fourplex today, that's what you would expect. And these are being sold as townhouses. So they're selling it for 1.2 million, and they're barely able to make the project work.
I think that's true. I always go by what I call the 80-20 guideline, and I think 80% of them are telling me the absolute truth, and the other 20 sometimes are saying, I don't want to do it, and I don't blame them.
Well, and then going back to what you said about, getting developers or somebody to move forward on a project for the homeless or low income. And we heard today, how easy it would be and how this is no problem. And I can tell you that somebody's got to pay for it at the end of the day. And you cannot ask a developer to donate their time and money. You can ask them, but they're not going to do it. So we need to come up with solutions. If we're honestly interested in moving forward with projects like that, then we need to bite the bullet. We need to come up with the incentives. We need to put skin in the game to be able to make projects like that work, because there's not a developer that I know of that's going to do it gratis.
I'm glad you said that, because that's where I was trying to inch over towards, but I'm not the expert you are in this field, so I agree. We may have to bite the bullet at some point, because it really is a huge problem, as we all know.
Not to share stories out of school, but that's what you just said, Brad, is about what you're going to hear me say in the State of the City address. And so, by the way, when I get that done, I'm drafting now. I'll shoot around to everybody here, so you see what at least I'm proposing to say. So, anything else? Let me just say a couple things. I just happened to bump into Sherry Russell, and she said she's been, received already today 15 requests for fiscal notes out of the legislature. Everybody knows it's coming up starting next week or the first week in February. Nancy, I'd like you to brief the board, either in a board meeting or individually, on what our procedures are for going up or down on certain legislative items that might affect us. How we address those issues, and on the ones that we that are kind of routine that our staff can answer, how we get to that. So you can do that during the board retreat or do individually or however you want to do it. But I think we all need to have a refresher on that. Happens every 2 years, but a lot of water goes under the bridge in 2 years. So if you could do that, that would be helpful. Second, let me just say to my fellow board members and to our newest board member, Stacy Giomi, that democracy works when boards do what we've done this morning. That's my own opinion. When you do things open, you discuss things. These are difficult situations we go through. I'm terribly impressed with this board, because you take on the issues head on is probably the wrong way of saying it, but in the scheme of transparency and efficiency, you folks do a nice job. And I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about you 4 board members. You do a nice job. You did a lot of things this morning. And I'll say it, and I'm going to say it again during the State of the City, you have every right to be proud of yourselves of the way you conduct yourselves in these meetings. So that's my 2 cents for the day. So,
You're a good leader.
That's worth a nickel, too.
that's worth maybe a dime. All right. Anything else?
Hold on.
Anything else coming up? If not, then let's, we're actually done at 12:10. Let's break until 1:30, and we'll take up items 28A and B, some appointment matters, and then we'll do an evening session with the school board. So one of our days where you earn your money. All right. Anything else? We'll be in recess then, unless there's something else. We'll be in recess until 1:30.